Okay. Hello?
Testing.
Okay, great.
All right, I can hear that.
Okay, good. Okay.
So are we going to get any feedback or echoing if we're...
Nothing is more vital to life on our planet than our Earth's oceans, which covers 71% of the Earth's surface.
Play this?
Yeah, just
Oh, sorry.
move this.
Mark, can you see the video? Can you see my face?
Yes, Captain.
Yes,
You
okay.
can?
Good,
Wait,
'cause I
the
don't-
video or because I can't?
I don't see. Okay, yes, there we go.
All right, can we move?
I'm gonna make that smaller. How's that?
That's fine. Can we move?
Yes.
Contain 97% of the
Grab this and move it up.
Nothing is more vital to life on our planet than our Nothing is more vital to life on our planet than our Earth's oceans, which covers 71% of the Earth's surface, contain 97% of the Earth's water, and provide over half of all the world's oxygen. Coral reefs are the only living things on Earth that can be seen from space. Unfortunately, our planet's ocean systems are at a dangerous tipping point because of the ever-increasing pressures they face. Unless significant action is taken, more than 90% of coral reefs will be severely threatened by 2030, and virtually all reefs will be at risk by 2050. Preserving the rainforest of the sea for future generations is critical. That's why, for more than 2 decades, the Reef Ball Foundation has worked to protect and restore our ocean ecosystems with our innovative Reef Ball technology. Reef balls are modules that mimic the structure and function of natural reefs and many other marine applications. They are used throughout the world in pioneering coral transplant technology and in restoration projects for oysters, mangroves, fisheries, lobsters, and sea turtles. They are also employed to create erosion control projects, living shorelines and seawalls, memorial reefs, and even projects for birds. We have conducted over 6,000 projects in over 70 countries and deployed over 600,000 reef balls. As a result of Reef Ball's efforts, 54 billion kilograms of biomass will be added to the Earth's oceans in the next 500 years. Education and community involvement are, and have always been, essential to our work. Our hands-on educational projects, as well as extensive community participation, not only help raise public awareness to the importance and vulnerability of our oceans, they actually engage people throughout the globe in the work we're doing. Needless to say, our success would not be possible without the support of countless volunteers, teachers, team members, and allies around the world. Reef Ball Foundation works with governments, businesses, schools, community groups, and people like you who are interested in protecting and preserving our oceans and the life that flourishes within them. Our work and our oceans ultimately depend on you. Please join us in our fight to protect them, and in the meantime, take a deep breath and thank our oceans for what they do for us. For more information about our work and how you can help, please visit our website, www.reefballfoundation.org.
Okay. So we were talking before a little bit about artificial reefs versus purpose-built reefs. And in the early days of fishing, man learned that if we threw a tree in the water or anything in the water, that there would be fish attracted to it. And we would go fishing there and we found that we would catch more fish. Well, eventually we found out the tree didn't last very long. It floated away and that wasn't really making long-term fish. So we started taking things that were heavier. We had, maybe an old construction house left over or something was left over, or a ship had sunk accidentally, and we found that there was good fishing around that. Well, it turns out, I'm going to go to the board here if you want to bring this around. We've all seen fish. You know that fish have this little line that goes off the back of the fish, right? That's called the lateral line. And the lateral line is a lot like a human ear is. When the wind goes past a tree, it makes a noise. And as humans, if we hear that rustling of a noise, we know we could go hide in the forest, right? If we're trying to get away from something trying to eat us. The fish do the same thing with any tall structure in the water. So if you have a pole in the water, or if you have an oil platform in the water, or if you have a tree, or anything in the water, as the wind goes past it, in this case, it's the current, it's gonna make a whistling noise, and the taller the object, the stronger that sound is gonna be, right? So that's gonna bring fish to the structure. So you'll see we have fishing attraction devices, which is an anchor, a couple of buoys floating towards the surface, makes a very loud whistling sound and brings a lot of fish into the area, right? So it makes fishing really easy. Same thing with an oil platform, it's tall, it's gonna bring a lot in. Reef balls, in order to mimic a taller structure, we have vortices holes. That's why there's a rounded shape that makes a whistling sound as well. So fish are attracted here too. But what's the difference? Fish is attracted to here. It makes fishing easy. You can catch the fish. But if you're not catching the fish every day, they're swimming around nothing, right? So they're not getting any food, and they're also not getting any shelter from a shark. Maybe if they're over here, they have a couple of places to hide from a shark. There's still not much food here. So what reef balls are trying to do is not just attract fish, but grow fish. So this is a good form of fishing gear. If you drop this down for a day and it attracts fish in and that's part of your fishing quota, fine, but all it is a better hook. If you're actually trying to make fish, then there's something even more here. Not only are we making food, but we're also making a place to have the babies, right? So it's a fish home. It's a place to nursery new fish and other types of life that live on the seafloor. So when we ask, people will ask me, well, how tall of a reef do you want to have? And this is where Reef Ball Foundation is really into purpose-built reefs. We want people to tell us what the goal is and why you're building a reef. Are you building it for diving? Are you building it for the environment? For the Reef Ball Foundation, our default goal, if nothing else, is to mimic a natural reef, right?
Okay,
If I
Todd,
go-
come sit down, Todd.
Okay, well, I'm still right here.
Okay, there we go.
If I look at a natural reef in your area, right, you guys tell me, what's an average size reef here? How tall are your natural reefs?
Oh, very short. I would say 1 feet.
1 foot, okay.
1 to
So
2.
the natural habitat in Brunei is about 1 foot tall. Okay, and then how big are the reefs or the patches? Do they go long and skinny? Are they patchy?
They're patches, so big patches.
Okay, so big patches is what we normally see.
Yes.
Big patches of 1 to 2 feet. So I would tell you that if you look at a reef, let's say we look at one of these patches, and we did a fish count, and we did a coral count, and somehow we could magically count everything that lived on it, every little nudibranch, every little sponge, every fish, every coral. If we knew what that number was, we want to build our reefs that have the exact same amount, right? So if we build patch reef, ideally 1 foot tall of reef balls, and we look at our reef of the same size as that, and we have approximately the same thing, and we've done a really good job. So if I go build one of these, I'm probably gonna have a whole bunch of big fish, no little fish, and is this gonna look like this? Probably not, right? So by default, this is probably not a good natural thing for Rhode Island, right? Now, it doesn't mean that you might not have the occasional bigger, maybe you've got a 2 foot reef out there. And maybe you find,
reefs with a bit more rocks, I guess. than
yeah,
you
you might have a few natural, maybe that's a spawning site that fish come and are attracted to meet up to go have babies. So maybe you do want a few bigger ones in there, but again, now you have to look at not just this reef, but your whole area and find out, yes, we have some variation. You may have a lot of just flat rock or whatever, but the more you match that, the closer you get that natural goal. Then on top of that, now we've got our human goals. Is our human goal fishing? Or is it diving? If it's diving, we may want it to make a cool little diving trail because we want people to be happy in diving. So you have to define what you want to do, and that's what's different about a purpose-built reef. What we're putting in the water is something that we've specifically designed for our purposes and for the fish's purposes. It's not just a material opportunity. We designed this to make oil. It's nice that it has some fish. We designed this to catch fish. We didn't design this to make babies. So we got to know what we're doing. And sometimes we have to augment what we're doing. So let's say here, we have to have an oil platform because we know we need, our economy needs oil, right? And this is gonna bring a lot of fish in. Well, great, we've got the fish, but we don't have the habitat. So we may have to put a whole bunch of reef balls around this habitat. So when the fish are attracted in, now they have a place to go. So if you've got a sunken ship that naturally happened, great dive site, right? Because it's got relief, people like to come to it. Again, it's attracting a lot of fish and it may not be growing as much. So we can put some reef balls around it and get double our money. Now we're getting lots of fish in and we're feeding them and we're giving them a place to hide. We're making an even bigger reef. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about what we're making with the reef, also here on the screen. If you have a reef ball, there's a void in the middle. Remember we put that ball today inside? So when a current's happening, a fish can go into that spot and hide, right? That's the perfect spot. But when there's a current, let's say the current's coming from this direction, there's going to be an envelope behind that a fish can get behind it. Think about standing behind a tree when it's raining, right? The wind's blowing. You still have some distance away from it where you get a shelter. And fish, when they swim, they use energy, but fish are cold-blooded. So if I can get out of the energy and not have to swim and just wait for food to come to me, well, I can grow fast. I don't have to waste all my energy. So by putting 2 or 3 reef balls together, or 4 or 5, now we're creating a much bigger current shadow. And this is called the effective void space or protection zone for a reef. The bigger your protection zone, the more fish can come in your reef. So what we're going to tend to want to put reef balls in groups, not all one big group, and I'll tell you why. Remember in Brunei, we have various reefs spread out that are small. Well, this area, let's say, is great protection for them. It's this space here that they can live in. But there's not currents every day, and just like a cow, they need to go out over to the sand and find shrimp and things to eat. So they need some foraging area between each of the reefs, right? For the grouper species, that happens to be about 75 meters, right? So as long as we get enough space to go out into the sand and eat, then our home is productive. So we want clumps spread out over the bottom. But as divers, of course, we want these clumps to be connected so that we can follow them and dive them.
What did you say was 75 square meters?
It's about 75
Meters.
meters all the way around, so in any direction. That's for a big grouper like we have in the States. The smaller the fish, the smaller the zone, right? And so snapper or even less, yeah. So it depends on your fish itself, and you can kind of notice when you go diving, a lot of times the big fish are scared of people. You'll see them go out in the sand and kind of sit and change colors and hide. Kind of look how far away they go from the reef. And whatever their natural zone is usually that zone where they just need space to go. And that's another way to hide. You can go in the reef ball, or you can go camouflage. You can just turn the color of the sand and sit down and wait for things to pass. So those are some advanced things there.
And normally how many reef balls do you guys pop together?
It takes about 5 to 6 to make a good local zone, but obviously you can do more depending on what your natural reefs look like. And when I'm looking at diving, I tend to want to build a reef that's just about the right amount for someone to see with a tank of air. So if I've got a natural reef nearby, I might sort of have them half on reef balls and, anchor over there, let them go across the reef balls, and it leads them to the natural reef, a little time there, or leads them to the shipwreck, whatever you're normally diving, and come back. But you don't want to have so much that you can't see it all in one dive. They like to go to different spots,
And if it's for fish habitat, you want to.
Then if it's for fish habitat, like what we're doing in Malaysia, it depends on the boat itself. If you're going for recreational fishing, it's once, maybe you only need 1 or 2 fish, or you just need 5 or 6 together. If it's a small commercial family fishery, maybe they're getting 100 kilograms of fish at a time, you might want 25 or 50 balls together. And if it's an open public site, you may want a couple hundred so that boats can park in different places and share the spot. So,
Okay. I guess, with fisheries, they want the fish stock to come back up because it's very low in Brunei.
okay, so there's the question. Do you want to attract fish in from offshore, or do you want baby fish that are going to grow up And remember that these baby fish may be in the mangroves for a while, then they grow up at midlife at a certain depth of the reef, they grow up at offshore. So you have to find out where the production is not happening. Where is it broken? Is it broken because all the adults are gone and there's no more eggs? Is it broken because there's no more baby habitat, no more nursery? Is it broken somewhere in between where we've had some destruction from maybe dredging or something, and there's a zone that they always get eaten when they go through? Those are called stepping stone reefs. A lot of times we'll connect nursery habitat to offshore habitat by making like a trail of reef balls that they can follow from one to the
Yeah,
other.
I know, we don't have that much development here, so
That's
it's
good.
not like we're losing a lot of things, but there has been, some loss of mangroves, but I won't say it's significant. There's no real study on these things, but maybe 10%, nothing, I mean, Thompson might be big, but we've never touched mangrove in history of Brunei, and there's been a bit of development recently, right? So there's some impact there. We assume that the seas are just not monitored. So there's a lot of Chinese and Vietnamese fishing boats coming in, and nobody knows, and they just catch all the fish and go away. So
Wouldn't surprise me. I know in Malaysia where we've had good studies, they have like 110% increase in catch since they had all the reef balls out and slowed the trawling down. That took a big effort.
Trawling, yeah.
And that's where they had to have larger reef balls than they wanted for the habitat. But they had to be big enough. They actually literally did a test where they took a trawler and it yanked the transom off the back of the boat when it hit the reef ball. And they were like, yeah, that's what we want. So they went with the biggest size reef balls they could get, almost the biggest. They found out that the ultra ball was big enough. They could have gone to the Goliath size, but they didn't need that much for the, I think this was mostly, I think he said Vietnamese, Chinese, and there was one other nation that was doing most of the fishing down in Sarawak. But foreign fisheries that weren't supposed to be. Indonesian, I think he said were fishing.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure about Indonesian ones, but
Taiwan?
yeah, we did have a big problem with trawling. I don't know if we still do. We have seen some reefs where we're diving and the next day it's gone because the trawler went through.
Yeah.
And there has been a ban on trawlers in Brunei. I don't know how much is enforced, but I don't think it's enforced that much. That's why they put the oil rig, decommissioned oil rig. That was anti-trawling.
Anti-trawling, yes. Big stuff that helps.
Mark, can you hear me? Mark,
His mute's on.
unmute yourself. Can you hear me?
Very good.
Yes.
Have we seen any evidence of trawling recently in the last few years or not?
Recently, the last 2 to 3 years, no.
No, I mean,
No.
we didn't see it at the diving sites we go to. There might be trawling in other areas that
Maybe
we haven't
different
seen.
zones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe in different area, but not on the sites that we always visit.
Okay.
One of the things about trawling and dynamite fishing, those are the two types of fisheries that are very destructive. So if you think about a coral reef that maybe takes 1,000 years to grow, even if you only have one trawler every 50 years and he makes that path you said you've seen, it may be 50 or 100 years before that path is growing back. It's like when you cut a forest down, it takes a long time for the forest to grow back.
Yeah.
So sometimes it just takes a while to heal once you stop that damage.
Okay.
And dynamite is even worse because when the dynamite hits, it's a big thing in the Philippines, all the coral falls into small little chunks, and it's just enough that they keep turning. So when the baby corals grow on them, they think they're landing on another coral that's stable, but it keeps flipping over and they never get bigger. So it stays small forever. So it's like you always have this very low relief rubble. You never quite get back to that larger relief that the fish like to have for protection.
Right. Fish farming, not so much here. We've seen only a few times. We've only heard it a few times in the last 10, 12 years of diving here. So not really so much an issue. I think there's been 2 people that were caught for it and then it's sort of stopped.
That's actually.
Yeah. So that's not an issue. So we're gonna assume fishing because we don't have, unlike some other countries, we couldn't have overfishing if it was just our local fisheries vessels because there isn't that
There's
much.
not enough.
There's like you could count like there's 20 fishing vessels and there's small ones.
Right.
You know, so it's not enough to fish out a whole ocean. But if there were a lot of other ones coming in and grabbing them and not going away, like nobody knows. So we assume that seems the most logical explanation for why we have a low fishery stock. And it's quite evident because we'll have a lot of tourists coming in. They're like, oh, your reefs are really healthy. We haven't seen this much soft coral in other places, but you know, it looks like fish. Now you go to Indonesia and Philippines, like you'll see a lot of fish life, but a lot of coral can be dead to bleaching, fish bombing, things like that. But they have a lot more fish than we do.
Right.
So we have healthy coral reefs, but not a lot of fish life. Yeah.
Well, and part of your problem too, quite frankly, this is a tough one to stomach, but you know, fish don't have fences. So even if you're doing all the right things and other countries are not doing the right things and they're destroying their habitats, when it's time for them to come by here, they're not here than when they used to be. So it's not always a local problem. Sometimes it's a global problem or a regional problem. You know, you may have perfect mangroves here, but where your fish go 500 miles away to breed, there's no mangroves, you know.
Yes.
They could go to some other
Correct.
coast.
In Brunei Bay, yeah, most of Brunei Bay is Malaysia. There is a lot more development on the Malaysian side than Brunei side.
You know, so there could be
Okay.
some impacts there.
Yeah, so I guess what the fisheries would like to know, I mean, what we're proposing to them is how would we arrange the reef walls to get the fish back? So
Well,
you-
okay, so there's two questions there. One is how do we get fish for those 24 fishing boats? And we could literally build a reef just for each boat, so it would have a spot that it could go and fish. But how to get generally more fish in the area, that goes down into the, you know, the question you were asking this morning. How many pounds of fish does a reef ball make every day? It's just a numbers game. Now, when I said that one pallet ball, you know, makes 400 pounds or 200 kilograms of fish per year, I mean, of biomass per year, 30% of that is fish. When you put 5 together in this grouping, you get a multiplier effect. So you'll get even more. And then it's just a matter of multiplying it across habitats. So,
What's the
you know,
multiplier? Would it double or just?
well, it depends on this group, but you can actually mathematically calculate this. It depends on the group, but it also depends on what the average current is there. So in general, areas that have stronger currents are more productive than areas of still water. So when there's an inlet going in and out because of a tide range, you'll get a higher production. So that effective zone gets bigger because it's in a bigger current shadow. If it's dead, calm waters, and interestingly, the clearer the water, which is better for divers, the less productive it is. We don't think about it, but what makes the water not clear is a lot of algae and things in the water that they feed on.
Yeah.
So the world's most productive oceans tend to be, you know, up in Canada and, you know, down in Argentina,
Yes.
Peru, where there's a big upwelling. And
Yeah.
here in the tropics, it's a lot, you know, they're
Okay.
not as productive.
Would grouping them together multiply like even double, or is it like 10-20% better? Or is
It can be
1%?
100% better if there's a strong current. Right?
Okay.
And it also, and this is where it really starts to get technical, depending on how much analysis you want to do. But there's a different grouping and a different spacing for different species. So if you're targeting one particular type of fish, we can really multiply it because we can make habitat just for that fish. But if you're trying to stick to the reef ball goal of being generalist, you got to kind of target to everything. You may be making some other fish that you're not eating. But what we do know is that sometimes they're doing things that are important. Maybe that fish that we're not making, that we're not eating, is also the same fish that cleans parasites off the bigger fish. So if you don't make it, then you know, Mother Nature has a balance of things for a reason. You got to have a bee to pollinate a tree, right? So, and most of us divers are aware of that because we watch the fish and we see all the little things going on. And the fishermen don't necessarily always understand that. They just know when things don't go well and they have a bad year. Some fish also have class years, like octopus are big for that. If you have an octopus fishery, every 2 years they all die off and then they come back, you know, because they have a 2-year life cycle. So sometimes they're just natural ups and downs, and it has nothing to do with the reef itself. And those multipliers can be stronger whenever we find there's a reason for it. So like you said, our mangroves are healthy. Adding more into the mangroves may not buy us that much because there's already enough of that habitat. But if you identify, oh, we're having a problem with you know, this area because there was a trawler that went through here, or we had some bleaching of our coral and the coral's not as healthy in the area, or you know, something else happened, then you might find that that was a really critical habitat that has a huge multiplier because that was the place that the fish are getting bottlenecked, as we call it. Okay, so trying to move on here. I tend to talk forever, so you guys got to keep me moving. Carla's usually good at this. Talking about the reef balls in particular for designed reefs, this was a little bit of the talk to the premier of why use reef balls. first of all, economics and scalability. You guys made already 10 reef balls and you're just still learning. You can imagine with that system, when it's scaled, the items that go in it are pretty cheap. It's concrete, rock, and sand that's all made in Brunei. It's not imported from another country. You can train anybody to do it. People that need jobs, it's an easy thing to train and scale up. If you got to order for 1 million of these things, yes, you'd have to be organized and smart, but you could do it, right? It's not like if you said, let's go to the moon, you'd have to invent new technology to do this. We've done it worldwide for 30 years, 2 million reef balls in 88 countries. It's going to be done anywhere. The stability is important. Reef balls, we will teach you how to make them as thin and as light as you possibly can, that they stay stable without anchors. You guys will be able to go a little bit thinner than even Larry can go because you really don't have big storms here, right? They're
No big storms. Yes.
not too often. So you can push the envelope a little bit and make a little bit lighter reef balls so that you get the most out of your concrete and it gets easiest to deploy.
How, making the walls thinner or thicker, like how much do they range? I mean, do they even half in weight?
Oh, I can go up to double the weight or as little as 75% of the standard weight.
Okay.
So it's easy to make them a lot heavier. It's hard to make them a lot lighter until you start using different types of concrete, different types of rock, which gets expensive. So most people don't go with that unless you have an aquarium or something you're putting them in.
You can also add more holes.
Yes, significantly more. And we'll teach you how to do that as well. When we teach you on training, we have all the holes equally spaced apart, so it's a really strong ball, right? But as you get better, you're going to start taking those little small balls, stuffing them in between the big balls,
Find them.
and getting interconnected holes and getting rid of concrete. There's a whole bunch of ways. Once you're confident that you can make a strong concrete and not break it, you'll keep pushing it until you finally break a ball, and you'll see how far you can go. And I love seeing how far you can push it.
It's actually a really good lesson learned. And I mean, don't be upset if you break a ball or two. It's actually a good, oh, this is why, or oh, that's what we did wrong, you know, and then you learn your boundaries. And then you can work within those boundaries, which doesn't mean, you know, you have to do this or that to get to that spot. It just means you need to arrange up to that spot.
Yeah.
And think of your own creativity too. You guys are divers. You know your water. We had somebody come to us one year and say, you know, we really want some octopus. And we're saying, you know, guess what? In Greece, we had a client that used to take glass bottles and they would put them inside the reef ball, sticking out of the hole, make sure concrete was all the way around it so it was dark inside. And the reason why they had it like this is so the sand would stay out of it. And the mother octopus would lay her eggs on the inside, plug the hole, and have her babies there. And we found out you can only put one per reef ball because they fight. If you have two women won't share the same fish house. One woman, one house. And it greatly increased the octopus take. So you can do little tiny interesting things if you have an unusual fish or a special fishery. Figure out what it is that that fish likes. In Florida, we have a certain type of grouper that likes to make a hole in the bottom. So if we had a flat bottom reef ball on one side and we put it on a rock over sand, it would back into it and it would make a big hole underneath it and make itself its own little home. And that's what it liked. It was a certain type of red grouper. So we just found if you want to make a red grouper, you put a rock under a reef ball on a sandbank and boom, you would always have a grouper there. Lobsters like certain holes, etc. So you can do that. Durability. One of the most important things of reef balls, you guys saw me really put Tide through hell trying to find microsilica and all the right admixtures. There's a reason why I am obsessive about this particular type of concrete. It's not that it's about more money. It's about making it last longer. So a reef ball is designed to last more than 5 centuries, right? This is long into our kids' future. So just like that one trawler took out 100 years worth of coral, a reef ball is going to put 500 years back right out of the get-go of a bay ball size. It would take 500 years for a coral to grow to that size if it were around, we call it Mount Boulder coral, to get to that size. Ultra wall could take 1,000 years to get that large. So we're putting a lot of habitat back right away. And then we're going to teach you how to plant corals. So a coral is just the outside skin is the part that's actually alive. So it needs all those years to build its inside trunk, but just like a tree, it's only the leaves that really count that make the shade, right? But it took all those years to get up to that height to make those leaves out there. That's kind of what we're doing with a reef ball, giving them a head start of a nice skeleton, and then they can form the coral around it, which gives them the protection and the color and the beauty. Inertness, we also, one thing that's great about the microsilica, if you took regular concrete, let's say you made a coffee cup out of regular concrete like your sidewalk, and you filled it full of water, what would happen? The water would seep through the cup on the ground because regular concrete is slightly porous. But with reef ball, it's completely inert, just like a coffee cup, like ceramics, water won't go through it. What's nice about that is if anything is in that rock, let's say that there's a little iron left over in that rock or a little fertilizer from land, gets locked up. It can't come out. Even if you dropped a little bit of lead or something poisonous in there, it's locked up. So basically you have an inert reef ball that's going in. So the fish have nothing to worry about. There's nothing that's going to get in their skin or make them bad. Biosuitability, reef balls were designed specifically with marine biology and biodiversity in mind. So when I talk about the biodiversity, we said we wanted all these different fish. Well, why do we want all these other little things? What about these little critters that we know nothing about? They're not important, are they? Or are they? What we're finding out is that every animal basically has a book written by God of what its life is. It's called genetics, right? So each little critter is different. And we don't know as humans when we're going to find information for medicines, for anything that could be really, really important in the future, food, all kind of things that we're studying. And we don't know which animals are important. So by protecting everything, we've got a better chance in the future to find something that we really need, and that's important too. And then, of course, you know, we have 12 different sizes and hundreds of styles. We taught you only 2 styles so far, a standard reef ball and a layer cake. But your creativity and our experience to teach you, there's so many different ways that you can make reefs, all these different sizes. Okay. There's a lot here about biodiversity. I'll skip that for now, but we can talk about that later. The trawling, this is the Sarawak. One thing I will show you here, and this is kind of important. This is the, let's see if we've got the internet connection here going through. Yes, okay. This is the world mapping system. There's a link to it in my signature line from any email I've got. This has the information about every reef ball we make everywhere in the world. So we want you guys to report back to us the coordinates of wherever you put them down. And anytime something happens, be it pictures that you take, newspaper articles, scientific monitorings, anything, you send us the location, the date. We will then put that in this map. We'll translate it into multiple languages as appropriate using ChatGPT, which really allows us to share worldwide. And that's because it does a good job of translating, not like Google that sort of translates weird.
Yeah.
But the idea is that you can drill down anywhere you want to go. And this is where I live, right? You can see all the different reef balls, and you're going to see different keys. So where you see these partner signs, all right, that is somebody, once you're in the reef ball world family, we all consider you family members. Whenever you travel anywhere, look up these people. You have someone to stop by, show you around the town, share with what they've learned, different ways they do reef balls. And if you go into any reef, you can zoom in further and further, and you can click on information on the outside. Will tell you general stuff, like this is the Lynn Silvertooth thing, and then there'll be a link to it. So that would be a link to the particular organization that built that reef. I don't know where I'm taking us right now, but
Confusing.
Yes.
anyways, that would go to Ponty, for example. We'll show you there,
Poni.
but Pony. And then you can click on an individual reef ball. This is not working very well here. And it will tell you the coordinates of that reef ball. In this case, for this drop, there's 18 Goliath balls, 31 bay balls, 2 of 6 drops deployed in June 2006. So there's no limit, and you can type in anything here. So let's do Poni Marine and see if this is correct for you guys. Is that right? Is that where you guys are at?
Move your mouse.
Now this mouse is, do you have a paper I can put in this mouse?
I'm
Oh,
sorry,
yes, you
what?
just need that you some,
I'm sorry, what was that?
If it's not,
here, try
yeah,
that.
let's see if that works better.
I think I got that on camera.
See if that works. Still jittery, it's jumping all over the place.
Gotta
Let
get
me
a new
try
mouse.
it from here. Yeah, that works better from
He
here.
doesn't like the trackpad. He likes
I
the
don't know
mouse.
if the trackpad is zooming in and out.
Oh, that should be fine.
Yeah.
So it's not a big break.
So anyways, so we put mold symbols where there's molds, we put different symbols for erosion control, other types of things.
There's a mold at International Airport.
Jumping everywhere.
That's probably, let's see what mold that is, the International Airport. Turn this upside down.
So awful, isn't it? Todd?
There, that makes it
Here,
better.
Todd.
A real mouse, yeah.
Oh, there we go.
It's the mouse. He needs to just get a new one.
Ah, look at that.
Oh, that's relief.
Whoa.
Yay.
I feel alive again. So where do we say there was a mold at the airport?
Go down and left. Down, left, there we go. What is that?
Office Tech, Alfred actually bought a mold here. I didn't know that.
Oh,
So this means that Alfred had bought a Baymall mold. Maybe we've got another mold we can add into your group here.
Oh.
Maybe.
yeah.
And
let's ask him.
it sounds like it's one of ours.
Okay, so, yes, so maybe there is some reef balls already in Brunei. I don't
Maybe
know
there's
what we did
some.
with them. That was a
Oh.
private program because it's not a, no, it's under our grant program. So we'll have to talk to
15,
him for
20
now.
years ago. Yeah, yeah.
We'll have dinner with him and find out what he's done with that. and
Okay.
Maybe if we're really lucky, he's put a reef ball down 20 years ago here in
Oh, that would be
waters. We
nice.
can get a picture of it and we can show what they're gonna look like.
Yeah.
That would be
Yeah.
That would be
really
awesome,
nice.
right?
Yeah.
Nothing better than local success.
Yeah.
A lot of people build stuff on their own for their own fishing sites and stuff, and unless you ask them, you don't
Alfred
get
is
the
a
picture.
fishing guy. They kind of-
Yeah, he's a Brunei fishing guy. One
Interesting.
of those 24 boats is probably.
He's like,
his.
I put it in the river, just, off my dock in my
See,
backyard.
There, I'm learning something. So this is the other thing, is whenever you travel somewhere, like you were asking me, where can I see reef balls?
Yes.
So if you zoom on back out here, you've got,
There we go.
here's tons and tons and tons of reef balls, right?
Yes.
And I know there's some really good ones in Miri near the dive sites, but you can actually click on and get, here's the coordinates of one. Oh, this says not coordinates, just a record of a barge leaving here. Read the notes whenever you click on one before you go diving all the way out there.
Go to a different one. Go to down, go
Yeah.
down, down, down.
I think the ones for the dive sites are in here.
Oh,
Yeah, I
It's
think
very
it is.
close to the dive shop.
Yeah, 225 reef balls, here's the thing, blah, 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 when they were put down, all the kind of information.
Oh,
There'll be
that's
links.
nice.
Really.
That's very neat.
And there's a whole,
Press-
like,
press
there's a
release.
star, so this is probably a local news
Yeah.
article about it, telling you more information than you ever want to know about everything. And trust me, when I say, please send us
Yes,
more
yes.
information, this thing,
it
we
helps
want
everyone.
information,
It
right?
helps everyone.
This is like Google Earth for reef balls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, update them.
And it's really helpful to you when you're doing marketing as well, because you can find similar projects. Let's say you're doing a mangrove project or a breakwater project. You can go look at what other people have done. And there's albums here of all their pictures. So you can actually look at how they set up their construction site, whether they were using different equipment,
Yeah.
all kind of different techniques and stuff. And you can go look at Larry's factory to see how the contractors do it when they're in big operations. You can look at little tiny hotels that just do one at a time with guests, kind of see how they handle guest programs, like kid programs. Again, anything. Also scientific studies. So all the
Wow, yeah.
science is in
Go
here.
find
So,
a scientific study.
yeah, so
Go
if you
to-
want to do
Over
a,
here. And find one. Over here. Like here's your contractors. If you scroll down here, you'll find one.
I know there's one here in Malaysia, because I just went to one here.
That one.
So if there's a scientific report, you click on the little hat and it'll have a summary that I use from ChatGPT of the science. And you click on it, it'll go to the full study. In this case, it's a PDF. And then you can get the whole study. So the first thing that fisheries is going to ask you when it comes to selling, prove this works. there's more than 100 scientific studies on reef balls, not on any other material. So if you really get down into, I need to know specifically how it's going to work with this animal or this location or for this technique, you've got proof. So what you're buying is 30 years of experience. So even though this is the first time you've made reef balls, you've really been in business for 30 years and have all of our combined knowledge to help you solve any problems you guys have. So that's the strength in numbers that we do
The
this
only
worldwide.
place I get the studies is in the world map, like as a look around.
Oh,
There's
no,
no
you can go
place-
to Google.
You can go to Google and find all other
Scholar.
ways,
You
but
can
this
go
is kind of
all
nice
over.
if you know where the study came from. So if you're looking for a study in Malaysian waters, find something local. If you can use Google to find it and then zoom in, like let's say you find one on erosion control in the Dominican Republic. Well, then you read that study, but then you go to the Dominican Republic and zoom in and you might find 10 follow-up studies. Because
Maybe.
not every study gets published. So sometimes the author will get his first study done, but all the monitorings, he just publishes them himself and sends us a copy and we put it up there. So it can be more complete. And the other thing that we try to do, this is more coming to English than going other ways, but we take studies like in China and I have them summarized in English so that anybody can read them. You can go the other way. If you have something in Malay, you can do it in English, but if you have something that's published in English, you can bring it back to Malay for a summary, at least so your own people can understand what it is. Right. And I don't necessarily have, what's great about ChatGPT is like I say, just summarize the abstract, the conclusion, and only things about artificial reefs or only about reef balls. So maybe it's a study on fish and there's 150 pages of technical information that you don't need. Show me the 2 pages on the reef balls and it'll do that, which is kind of nice.
You have to do some training of ChatGPT for that.
So anyways, don't need to go into all this, but just know it's there as a resource and you can add stuff at any time. Back to the studies.
We
These
send
are-
that stuff, but we would send you with that stuff, I guess.
Yes, you would send that stuff to us, but you can also look on the map anytime and also check your own stuff. If I've got a spelling wrong, or if I've got some facts wrong after we put I'm a data hog and that as soon as I get it, I put it up even without reading it. So if there are mistakes, let me know. And this might be interesting. You guys are not legally allowed to see this. But this has actually got the coordinates of what they did in Malaysia and some of the points. They don't publish these publicly because they don't want the trawlers to know exactly where they're at. But this is just a zip Google fly-in. On the
Takes it a
regular
second
map,
to
you'll only
load.
see the outline, but here you'll actually see each of these dots represents a drop of 400 balls all the way up and down the coast. So you can see how busy Wilson has been. You see how they do a zigzag pattern.
His lifetime work.
Wow.
And what is the purpose of having this wall of reef balls?
That's specifically so the trawlers won't know where they're at, and if they're trying to trawl in the waters, it rips them,
No.
transom off the back of
Wouldn't
the
they
boat.
just try to be away from the wall, like on the north side of the wall?
Well, they don't tell you where they're at.
Okay.
And those corridors, those are drops, but they basically didn't tell, they just said it's somewhere in the zone and nobody knows where. And when they're trawling them, they drop a few off randomly anywhere in the water. So that they used a program that was done by I think the Japanese did it in World War II when they mined a bunch of areas and they figured out there's a certain probability when you won't sail another boat through when you think there's at least a 10% chance I'm going to get blown up. So they kind of used the same technology that it was more costly for them to
There's a
go through the
breakwater.
area and lose the net than it was for them to avoid the area. They weren't making enough economic return stealing the fish compared to losing their nets, so they learned to go away.
There was
So-
a breakwater up there.
Yeah, which is some of the other things. All right, coral forest, we're gonna talk a lot about here, depending on how much interest you guys have, the planting of the corals. But this is typically that plug hole that you saw us making in the reef ball today. This is what a plug is gonna look like with a coral on it. Okay, and this is the putty that you're gonna put in. You just put a little bit of underwater putty and plug it into the reef ball, and that's all you're planting to make these big reefs. So very tiny amount of coral, make a very big reef in the long run. So it's minimal effort. So it's really a pretty neat system, and I'll explain more about that in some detail here.
Matter what orientation you planted in, or is it like something?
It does. Okay, so most people will plant a coral upright, like you would plant a plant. Wrong, bad. Okay, so when a coral breaks in a storm, it falls to the bottom. If it lands on the sand, it's gonna die, but if it lands on something hard, it literally melts its own bone, like when a kid breaks his bone, it'll melt it back. It'll melt down and form a disc, and then it'll re-sprout out and go into a new form the way it's supposed to be for that spot, to the current and to the wind.
Stronger
or to
base.
this plant. So if you plant it upright, it doesn't know anything happened and it keeps growing. It looks beautiful. And then the first big storm comes along, it breaks right in that one weak spot. So by going sideways, we let it know that it's had a problem, that it's fallen, that it's in danger. So it will melt itself down, go over the disc, glue itself to the reef ball, so we don't have to rely on that putty we use is temporary. It glows over it, then it grows up, and now it knows it's in a new spot, and it'll grow out to its new orientation. So that's why you want it to know that it's actually been injured.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want to make it, you don't want to overbaby it.
Yeah.
It's a response mode that you want to get it into, just like a human, when you break a bone, if you just crack it, it just does a little bit of healing, but you break a bone completely. If you ever had an x-rayed afterwards, you realize your bone is stronger there at the broken spot than it was before it broke, because it knows to make a good strong bond. So they asked us a bit about coral mariculture. They're going to be doing some coral export down there. That's not something I don't think we'll be doing here for an eye, so I'll skip that.
Sorry, I got distracted for some reason happened. So basically, you don't always want to plant it facing up.
No, you never want to.
Because you want it to learn on its own.
It's called a basing response. Now, these are only corals that base, which is 90% of most of them that you work with. But if you plant it upright, it will just continue to keep growing.
Yeah.
And now it's reliant on that plug and on the glue you put on.
Yeah.
And when the storm happens, it's just gonna break.
Yes, yeah.
So instead we plant it sideways, and it's gonna melt down, and it's gonna grow out across the disc and onto the reef ball. And then it's gonna rest for about 6 weeks, depends on the season. You'll see it stop growing. And what it's doing is it's now, first it didn't take any calcium carbonate out of the water to go. It melted its own bone down and spread it out. Then it rests and it recharges and it gets its energy back. And then it'll start taking calcium out of the water and growing like it normally does up as a tree. So it's kind of like rooting a plant. But you got to stimulate that response by it being upside down or sideways. And
Upside down as well.
Yeah, it's also stimulated by the type of the hydraulic cement that we use.
Yeah.
When we put it, there's little tiny hands in a coral, right?
Yeah.
So you want the maximum number of hands touching cement.
Okay.
All right. So if you put it this way, you might have, let's say, 50 polyps around the edge, it'd be 50. But if I planted it this way, I might get 200. So that's 200 more places for it to grow out. So you got to think like a little tiny micro baby coral, basically. You want to stimulate it to know that it's been broken after a storm and it's trying to survive and hang on. You want it to root out.
Regenerate, yeah.
Yep.
Let's all think like a micro baby coral right now.
Now, that said, and this is what you'll get in the coral training, every species is a little bit different. There are exceptions to every rule that I'm telling you. So these are general things, but you have to know the particular coral you're working with, or at least the general class.
I saw one time at one place, I mean, I've only seen it once, but there was somebody that recorded the coral, how it melts down
Oh.
and then regenerates and starts to grow
Yeah,
back
I've
up.
done
It's
several of those.
crazy. It's hard to find, but if you find it, it's so cool. You're like, oh my God, that actually is exactly what happens. It was like, no, I don't like this. And it just melts down like a pancake
Yeah.
and it just starts to grow back up. It's crazy.
Okay, let's say we have two corals. We have a boy coral and we have a girl coral. And we have two reef balls, right? I can do a couple of things. One, I can take two fragments from the same tree, this happens to be a girl, and plant this fragment here and this fragment here. And what's going to happen? They're going to grow up, and when they touch, they realize that they're from the same tree. So they're going to fuse into one big coral.
We are family.
Okay, so now we have our two reef balls glued together. Now I can also do this. I can put one from here, and one from here. Okay, now when they touch, they're not from the same tree, so they're gonna fight. So they're never gonna grow together, so they're gonna have two like that, right? But this guy happened to be a male and this is a female. So when she releases eggs, he releases sperm and we get
New
more babies
family.
closer together, better chance they're gonna breed. So it's all kind of interesting things we can do. Whenever we're making copies, this is a clone of the exact same individual, right? We can also breed the eggs in an aquarium and make our own fresh corals, but that's an advanced step we're not gonna do here. We're just gonna be working with the clones. Okay, so we're not talking about coral mariculture. You asked questions about local artisanal fisheries. This just tells you a bit about how much fish they produce. A lot of times when you have local fisheries, you might want to have them on a rotation. All right, so you had your 4 natural fish sites. I bet you the families don't all fish the same site all the time and never fish the other 2. So if you make 3 reef ball sites, for example, they can fish this for a couple of months, then switch over and fish this, let this one recover, switch this. When you have community reefs and community management, you can set up a scheme where they know, let's not fish this one this month, let's fish that one that month, and make it much more productive because you're not taking every single fish off the reef. So those are the kind of things you might want to think about with the fisheries department. All right, now I'll touch on another one is littoral and erosion control. All right, there's 2 basic types. Let me erase all this and start over here. I'm sorry, you guys know my handwriting is so bad. I hope you can understand any of this.
Got it, so clear.
Just draw.
We have a seashore here. This is Brunei.
thicker.
We have global warming and the seas are getting deeper. So we're gonna have more erosion. We can either put reef balls offshore here so that the waves will break and have less energy hit the shore, or we can put eco wraps along the shore and defend the waves from the shoreline. So we can either put stuff inshore as kind of a defensive measure. We can put stuff offshore as an offensive measure. One of the things that we found in Malaysia, and it may be true here, that this is gonna be hard to do. What is your tide range here?
Mhm.
You mean height or?
Yeah, from
Height, so
they-
chart readings about 2 meters.
about 2 meters. Okay, so you're
That's
probably doing
more or less, yeah.
Malaysia, they had closer to 3 meters. So if you're only down up to 2 meters by the chart here, that helps because when the water is really high above a reef ball, even if you have a big barrier of reef balls, the waves go right over top of it and you'll still get a lot of erosion. We have in the Caribbean, we have 1 meter and it's really easy to use reef balls. So you guys are in between, which means it's like in the Caribbean, we may be able to use just 3 rows of reef balls. You guys might need 5 or 6 rows of reef balls to get the same amount of protection. So that makes it a little more expensive.
How does the rows help?
Okay, so the rows, I don't know if you've got a picture here. If you do, this is called, okay, this will be along the beach.
Where's that
Here's your
aerial?
beach, here's your water coming in. The wave that comes in, it has to trip. There's a couple of ways they work. First of all, part of the reef balls reflect the energy back out to sea, right? That's the solid concrete part. But the bigger part is when the wave spills, it loses a lot of energy. It converts to a flow and dumps a lot of energy before it hits the shore. Well, in order to spill, you know how the wave has to rise up? It takes a little bit of time. The bigger the wave, like a long period wave, those really big ones, they take a wider crest. So you have to have more distance from here to here. And the more you are below the sea, like at a high tide, the longer that takes for it to flip over a trip. So you just gotta have enough width to trip that wave to actually make a good thing. Now you want the regular waves to come to shore. You only want to trip the storm waves, right?
Lost.
The regular waves are important. That's what your turtles come in on. That's what makes your beach healthy and have nice sand on it. But you want to stop the bigger waves, the stuff that will wash the sand away, hit our houses, hit our homes.
I think we did have one big storm. I remember this was 2015, Mark. There was a point when signboards were falling off in town. I think there was a really big storm, and Pelumbu, you could see probably 50 trees all fell in. And all the beaches, we saw all the beaches, they lost a lot of sand. That was a really big storm. Mark, do you remember when this is? because we were struggling to dive around that time. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
This one when Dolphin 88 was sank 2013.
2013. So yeah, that
Yeah.
was the wreck actually sank and things were falling. And so yeah, I guess that would have been that one big storm where and it would happen. It probably happened at high tide as well. So then the waves
The
reached
worst
higher.
case scenario, yeah.
Yes,
happens that
and
way.
every year usually we get king tide, which is probably in December or January, where the high tide would be, Mark, is it 2.4 or 2.8 for the king tide every year? 2.6?
2.6, 2.7 like that.
Yeah, 2.6 is only once a year that happens.
Yeah,
Usually
we
our
have
high
king
is
tides too,
2.4.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's when we see more rubbish as well.
Yeah.
Because then they refloat the rubbish, it comes back in.
You have an aerial view somewhere in here.
I do, I'm not sure if it's in this presentation. Oh, here we go. So there's one that's a really wide crested one. This is on an island in the Bahamas where they have winter storms that are usually 11-second periods, those big swells. So you can see this one's really wide.
That one's 9 in some places and 4 or
9
5 in
11.
others.
This was an area here where they wanted snorkelers to be able to come inside of it. There's some natural reef in there, so that kind of builds around it. So it gives you sort of an idea. Again, I don't know that these are going to necessarily be really useful here. It's just good to know this technology. It might be useful in some of these out islands that you have, some places where you want turtle nesting, destination type places. But you guys travel the world, so you also might find you're traveling someplace where they do have a lower tide and have an opportunity. So, good to know that the technology exists. This is the technology that's probably more appropriate for you. Along a seawall, these reef balls are built into layer cakes, basically, if you can think about it that way, where the fish can be underneath, but it gives a transition for birds and things to go between the land and the sea without it just being a solid wall. So it just looks a little bit nicer. The kids can walk out over. I don't know if you can tell by where this is pointed. It makes a tidal pool so that it stays full of water and you can get some critters living in there. There's artistic things you can do with this in terms of a homeowner's house, things like that. But it's just another way of making something more solid and less kind of engineered. This is something they're looking at down in Malaysia for some of the marinas and stuff like that.
Sorry, different color,
Yeah, okay, so normally
rock.
reef balls are built below the biological tide line, which is the area where the corals grow.
Yeah.
But in this case, we're building it higher because it's going up on the seawall. So the tide line is right around here. So if you look at this picture today, you can't see it, but all the stuff down the water is just oysters. It grew over all that. But the top still has the color. So we put natural rock on top.
Oh, okay.
And we actually colored some of the concrete with, you take regular latex paint and mix it in with house paint. It's got to be exterior without mold killer on it.
Sorry again. What kind of paint?
Latex,
Yeah.
exterior house paint that doesn't have mold inhibitor in it. And you put that in the concrete, and because it stays out of the water, it changes it permanently.
Okay, and why did you want to put color? Just
because it was, this is at a bar, as you can see, it's a very public tourist spot, and they just wanted to make it look not like concrete, a little more natural.
Here's the video with the bird swimming in the water.
I
Everybody loved that
can
one.
show that in a little while. These are what you made today, the layer cakes. This will give you some idea how they look from underwater. This is how the lobsters would get in them, and turtles get around them. They're oftentimes used for snorkelers and for ecotourism because it just breaks up the monotony of reef balls are perfect for fish, but sometimes humans want a little bit of change, and that works well for those. You asked about the mangroves. There's a couple ways you can do that. Usually when you're planting mangroves, it's easy to plant mangroves inland, but when you're right at the sea, especially in big areas where you've lost mangroves from the big waves, you need something to hold them stable long enough to get them growing. So we basically use the small reef balls as a mangrove pot. And we make it out of a dissolving concrete.
Is it the oyster or?
We can use the smaller ones. The oyster ball works pretty good for it. Depends on the size of tree you're planting.
Smaller than oyster?
Yes,
Your oyster ball mold is a little smaller than what we sell.
And we have a mangrove cultivator pot, which is
Yours is
specific
like-
for mangroves, which is a little
It's like
smaller than one that you have, but it's a little more rounded shape,
Yeah.
like a pot.
Right. Close to
And you can
that.
use any of them, adapt them. You have to close off the holes with dissolving concrete as well. If you want to use a regular reef ball, depends what you want after. And you can line it with burlap and put mangrove muck in it as soil. But how far you grow the tree up is how deep you can put the water in, because if the mangrove is underwater for too long, it drowns. So you can do them on land and let them grow up a little bit. For a bigger mangrove, you put them in deeper water, or you can use seedlings and you can do smaller ones and do them close to shore. It depends how far out you want to plant them. But for us, we like to work with the red mangroves. Those are the ones that have the roots that go in the water, because they make great habitat for fish too when you get those growing. So the dissolving concrete, all you do is you take regular concrete, you don't use the microsilica anymore, and you substitute a percentage of plaster of Paris. You know what the kids use to make
Handprints and things like this.
Plaster of Paris.
it's gypsum.
The girls know what
the
it
kids
is.
work with you and water and it runs really fast.
I have no idea.
The girls know what it
Moms
is. I'm like,
know.
oh, yeah.
Dads don't know.
Plasticine.
No.
Think about drywall, what they make drywall.
Drywall,
There you go. It's the same stuff they
There's
make
nothing
drywall.
like
with.
drywall.
Gypsum, yeah, I know gypsum. as well,
Gypsum,
yeah.
right. So it's powdered gypsum.
Powdered gypsum.
So you mix it in, and gypsum dissolves in salt water.
Yeah.
So you got to, and Dr. Jason Krumholz, who's our science coordinator, has made a study of it, so he can tell you exactly what percentage to put in to make it dissolve in a certain number of years or months or days. And you can do some interesting stuff with this. So you can also make a surface on your reef ball that's designed to become a hole later. So like in the Florida Keys, we have a snorkeling reef that we're making, but they want to plant mangroves on, but it's a really big energy area. It's near a big bridge where there's a lot of currents. So they want to be able to do corals if the mangroves don't work. So we're making mangrove planters out of dissolving. We're making regular reef balls with coral plugs underneath it, and we're planting the mangroves. And if they survive and get big and strong, great, we got a mangrove forest, that's what they want. But if the storms take them out, it's going to go back to regular reef balls already with coral plugs, and we'll just go out and plant corals 5 years from now. So we have a backup,
Yeah.
right?
B.
Exactly, plan B, doing the same time, so we don't have to do the job twice.
Yeah.
So, but you can do different features if you want to have something slowly dissolve for various reasons. You might want to have a scientific plaque inside that after a certain amount of time comes available to show you a number, all kinds of interesting things. But dissolving concrete, think about it if you ever need it for anything.
Could we try and do a dissolving concrete, something for mangrove with one of our oyster balls?
You certainly can,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah, okay.
Absolutely. It's totally compatible with your system. You just substitute the different in there. What I would usually do, this is really probably the easiest, make a regular reef ball, right? And then just mix up some plaster of Paris and regular cement and plug the holes. Now you have a pot.
Mm.
And now put your muck, your mangrove muck inside and plant your mangrove in it.
Burlap.
Now what I do is, now the bottom of your hole is gonna have a hole in it when you do a reef ball, right?
Yes.
So in that part, you can use regular concrete and stick some wood, and the wood will dissolve out as the roots come through it. So, but while it's full, you can put your mangroves in, get them started, put them out in the water, and then as they grow and they fill that pot, they'll break through the wood, and then over time the holes will open up and the fish will move in. Now, if you want to make it completely, as the tree grows, it'll eventually break the reef ball because it'll get big enough. Or you can just leave the reef ball there. Or you can make the whole reef ball dissolving as well, and it'll disappear as well, depending on whether you want to have the reef ball there because it's already in the water, or if it's up on shore and you want it to dissolve.
Okay.
So you can play with the designs any way you want.
So first to try this, all we need to find is powdered gypsum.
Yeah,
And
it's
Yeah, burlap.
plaster of Paris. Yeah,
Burlap.
Okay.
and it usually comes in
It's
the
fine.
big
We saw it in,
kids stores.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty cheap.
And burlap.
Oh, yeah. I often line the inside with burlap as well. Just,
like a sack.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
inside.
burlap sack, okay.
yeah, that just helps you to hold in the mangrove muck.
Okay, yes.
Sometimes we use that. All right, so, and this is an example of oysters growing on reefs.
Supplements.
The oysters I have here, though, are very small.
Again.
We eat our oysters. Your oysters are too small here to eat, so, but they are really good filter feeders. But those are actually,
How effective are these oysters at filtering water? I mean, how much
Wow,
oysters? do
50
you need
gallons
to
a day.
filter
50
Each
gallons a day.
oyster, yeah, each oyster does about 50 gallons or 200
day.
liters of water a day, from dark water to crystal clear.
50 to
We, 50
50 to 100
50
gallons.
gallons is 200
A
liters.
day, yeah.
4 liters
200 liters a day.
a
a
day
day,
But
per oyster.
per oyster.
And you can see there's about 1,000 oysters on each of
And
those reef balls.
one
More
reef
than that.
ball has about 1,000 oysters.
Well, it depends on your size
Yeah.
of reef ball.
And that reef ball is a big
That's
ball,
that's an oyster ball.
but oyster ball is what size? Is it big?
Is that
Same
an
one that
oyster
you
ball?
made.
Oh, okay, same.
But it's
Oh.
grown up because the oysters grow so fast.
Right, and
I don't know.
so when they filter the water, I mean, they'll take out the bad stuff, but does it actually increase water visibility as well?
Yeah, I've got a picture in Tampa Bay, in fact, offshore, we've done a big bar of them. And you can see the dirty, from the air, we got an area, you can see the dirty water coming across it and it clear on the other side. It's amazing. It's able
And
to-
they filter that fast as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
interact-
A day.
There's
One
a
oyster.
scientist that who does this for
Holy-
a demonstration. He puts an aquarium and has a dinner for
Oh, I've
people.
seen that video,
And
yeah.
he puts one oyster in there during dinner, and by the end of dinner, the whole tank is clear,
That's
so,
impressive, but you can actually see it.
yeah, this is kind of a.
And to do an oyster ball, like, what do we need to do? I mean,
Wait, wait, wait.
Well, this is the problem. We have a different species of oyster than you guys do. I don't know
Yes.
enough about your species to what's stimulated. For us, if we put this at the right water elevation, as you can see, we didn't plant those. Those are 100% natural. We just put it in the right place
And they all just.
and they
flop
just
down.
grow. It's like barnacles in the bottom of your boat.
Yeah.
I don't know here what the conditions would be to be like that. I just don't think the water's full enough, so.
I just want to make it known that it does not have to be an oyster ball size in order to have a ball that grows oysters on it. It can be whatever
We just happen
size.
to call that the oyster ball
Yeah.
because we use that size for oysters a lot because most of our oysters are inshore and they're done mostly by kids.
Yeah,
And we needed something
They're
small
small.
enough for the kids to do.
right.
So that's
I
why we call
follow
it that.
that project, I think it's in New York, or New Jersey, Billion Oysters.
Oh, we have a
Yeah,
lot.
the Million
projects
Oyster
like that.
Project in New York.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it looks really cool, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I'd love to do something like that here. And nobody actually like tries to do oyster eggs or spawning or whatever it
Yeah, there's
is.
places that
That's
do.
because for us, we eat them and they're worth a lot of money. So there's a lot of money to be spent on breeding them and putting them in. It would be difficult to get that to happen here because you don't eat them.
We eat them, but not, I mean, it's not that much, I think,
Yeah.
I don't know, yeah.
And there's this small.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
these things get like
so there's nothing.
$25 per pound. It's, you know.
But you guys don't pick it, right? You leave it there to filter the water.
For us, we're doing the filtration.
Yeah.
Some of them do harvesting.
And-
Mostly what we do is we have a oyster disease called vibro, which is a bacterial disease, and we have bred oysters that are resistant to it. So we actually spawn in a tank those oysters on a reef ball, and we put them inshore in lower salinity waters where they normally couldn't spawn, and let them have the babies that go out to sea. And that reseeds the natural population with this vibro-resistant oysters where they harvest them.
Mhm.
So it's a big program, big federally funded
And-
program.
So you guys don't do anything special, we don't, it's just the same reef ball that we're doing now, but you put it as.
It's actually even less special in that they're not as sensitive as coral, so we only have to use half as much microsilica and they're happy with it.
Okay.
So
The microsilica is not just for the structure, microsilica is also,
it's absolutely required for coral settlement. And for a lot, it's, high pH on concrete keeps a lot of things from settling. You'd only get barnacles mostly on regular concrete until it's at least a year old. Now, if you leave concrete in the water, just regular concrete long enough, it'll eventually have a low pH. But putting fresh concrete in the water, you'll have a really unusual fouling community because most of the stuff that lands on it doesn't want to grow. Only a few things are strong enough, so you get a whole bunch of that, but nothing else. When you put a neutral pH in, anything that lands on it grows. So you get sort of the wild card, which is more like Mother Nature.
okay, and the microsilica helps to get it in neutral pH?
Yes, it's absolutely required. So when concrete goes off, it creates a second kind of glue. And the byproduct of that concrete reaction is it leaves over calcium hydroxide, also known as lye, that you put in to clean out your sink. So the microsilica starts working after the regular concrete reaction goes off, and it reacts with the lye, and it makes a second kind of glue. And it makes it twice as strong because it's making a second kind of glue, but it's also locking up all that lye, which is, really nasty calcium hydroxide. So it's a really, really important chemical. It's also what keeps that water from going to the concrete, makes your porosity low.
Right, so that's what it's like waterproof.
Yes.
concrete, Right?
And it also prevents the concrete from being degraded by salt. And if you put it in fresh water, it wouldn't matter, but you put it in the sea, the concrete will start to break down without the microsilica. So that's important.
Silica is really, really important.
Good stuff. And you got it cheap, which is even better.
You got a big old bag of it. It's
Yeah.
great.
So that formula with 8%.
8%. You can go up to 15 if you wanted to, although
Yeah.
most people don't because it's expensive,
Expensive,
but for you
yeah.
guys, you can go up to 15, no problem.
That sounds like enough for 10 years, so enough for 10 years there.
You can go to places with, some bling on, some sunglasses, big old pimping hat and be like, sell you some microsilica.
And once you've used it, you won't build anything else in your life without it. It's so much
That's
stronger and
true.
better. If you make steps for your kids or do a patio, you're always gonna want to put microsilica.
Or in our kitchen, our
Our
countertops.
Made of microsilica.
And they are, the microsilica, no stains get in it, nothing can penetrate it. Beautiful granite countertops.
Like kitchen.
And we'll never get to replace our kitchen sink ever.
What happens when you put more than 8 to 15%? Then it becomes.
Then there's
Yeah,
no,
it's like-
there's no
There's
more
no
room for it to
benefit,
react to.
yeah.
Now it has nothing there's only so much calcium hydroxide from the,
Oh, okay. It
So
won't-
15% would
acidic,
react all of
and
it.
What's the opposite of
Base.
acidic?
Basically.
Alkaline.
acid.
It doesn't mean alkaline.
It doesn't make it act, no. It only reacts with that one chemical.
Okay.
It's neutral. Actually, all it really is super, 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 super fine sand like it's on the beach.
Right. So basically it just stops the lye from coming
just-
out at the top, and that's why
Yeah.
it's, okay, it locks the lye inside.
It
so it's
creates,
still-
it reacts with it.
Right, so it's still locked, but not at the surface.
It goes all the way through the matrix.
Oh, okay.
So that,
okay.
that lye is every part of the concrete, and so that glue, it takes about 3 days for it to fully react. That's why you'll notice how strong the ball was yesterday, but wait until deployment day. If you took a drill and tried to drill into that first ball we
We gotta
made,
get through.
you'll just break it real bit.
Okay, so after you put silica, you can't drill through it.
Harden.
It's almost impossible. Yeah, unless you have a diamond tip drill bit,
Okay,
a really strong industrial drill bit, but it'll take a long time. Yeah, but you can, if you want to put holes, do it right away when it's green. When the concrete's still fresh, like the next day, you can still drill on it. But not after a month for sure.
okay. Yeah, and then the microfiber is for the cracks.
For the cracks, while it's cured. You can also put strengthening fibers, but you don't need those here. That's more for in a breakwater situation, when you got big waves going over and things hitting it.
Yeah.
And then we put in a second kind of fiber, the bigger ones like
The ones that we
that
showed
you
you.
found before.
Okay.
All right, so, and then this is just about some of the old artificial reef stuff we've already talked about. So that's the end of this presentation. Now, I've got tons of other presentations in here depending on what you want to talk
Oh,
about.
show them the bird.
Bird.
Yeah.
The bird in swimming the.
Okay,
Uh-huh, and the
bird. Let me
eco
see,
wrap.
where
It's
was
really,
that at?
it's a cool little video.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
think,
I have-
I think
have-
everybody kind of went, oh, cool.
I have a
during
lot of
the-
questions about different things, but I want to finish your presentation. and I'll have some
Okay,
questions.
Carla, I believe you sent it to me, right?
Nope, I don't
From
know
you?
where you found that, but you had it ready for the.
I know it was in there.
Yeah. Yeah,
It should be an attachment.
you sent it to yourself or?
Yeah, I think I sent it to myself.
Eco wrap or a, was it? Living
I
shoreline
don't know what it would be. Has attachment maybe.
video.
I don't know that I've got it. I know I've got it on my phone, but that's probably just not gonna happen, so. Let's move on to the next thing. What was your questions?
Lots.
I'm not sure, I think I might have asked this one, so there is actually a government building nearby here,
Yep.
Your Wix.com account maybe?
and it's called the Marine Biodiversity Center. And I think I mentioned this, I was interested to maybe try and set up a coral research facility. Nothing too fancy, basically, we just want a system, I mean, it's basically an aquarium system, like a protein skimmer, and, all that stuff, the water filtration, pump tanks.
Got a huge setup in a trailer in Florida. You want to drop?
Oh, man.
I'm trying to get rid of it right now.
Please take it.
Yeah,
We got a $10,000 tank that we started, but
okay,
it was too much electricity for the house. My bill went through the roof.
yes. Yeah, so we basically wanted to set up something where if we had university students that wanted to do some research, we could monitor, because we're not doing diving every day. We could try and grow specific coral that might be more resilient. We could try a couple different variables in the conditions to see A or B, which one grows faster.
Yep.
So we just need an environment where we can monitor it.
Yeah.
And there is a place, the government said you can use it, they build a building and they know what to do with it, basically.
Do they have plumbed in fresh water for aquaculture?
There is actually a seawater intake system there. I think it's not working anymore, but I can find a sponsor that'll say, here, if you need $20,000-$30,000 to set it up, they'll sponsor it, and it applies for education, the university will send students over, and monitoring. We can get some of the university master students to sort of have a schedule to come and check, better check daily on these things. But I need the expertise. to set
I'm an
it up.
expert in that.
Okay.
That's one of the things I can do. It
Okay.
is, I will warn you, it is very labor intensive. It does take a lot of ongoing maintenance, a lot of chemicals. It's
Yeah.
suited for if you've got a university or a lot of students there that can
Yeah,
watch
so I
it.
think, yeah, the idea was, some of these things, you might even have to go every 8 hours or something.
And it depends on what you're doing. I mean, you could sort of
And the size
do
of this, right? The
basic
bigger it is-
experiments with like CCA and some really simple corals that are easy,
Yeah.
just A and B. But just if you've got fresh source of water, it's way cheaper. If you've got to do the filtration, the protein skimmers, the
Mhm.
temperature control, the pH, the ORP,
Yeah,
then it really gets technical.
right, yeah,
It's even more technical if you want to do anything with the corals after you get them.
yeah.
So once they come into a tank, you can't put them back in the ocean if that tank has ever touched anything from any other ocean. So as soon as somebody's brought a filter or put a fish in it from the Atlantic,
Yes,
it contaminates the whole tank, right?
okay,
So, but you can do it, you just have to have the tank, what's called locally sterile, which means you have to cycle it naturally here. You
Yeah.
can't put anything from another, you can't go to the pet store and buy a fish
Yeah.
and put in.
yeah,
You gotta cycle everything from your ocean, use only natural fish from your ocean, then you can put it back, because now
Yes.
nothing
Yeah. climate
new has been
science.
introduced. right?
okay. We'll try and see in the schedule again, when we can bring the NBC.
Was it
Then,
No.
that one I'll talk to
none of
Bessie.
this?
Yes.
Bessie used to be in charge of NBC.
Yeah.
Then I can show you, so they have a small auditorium sort of, where we can do, where the school kids can come.
Right,
Because if I wanted to invite like 50 schools 5 days a week, that's the place.
right.
It's got big parking, they use the touch pools and some fish and stuff, every night they can take them. So there is aquariums as well, and then, there's like 10 aquariums. There's an open touch pool where they put some starfish, but everything died. We might have some idea of how we could maybe run it more for scientific
Yes.
purposes, because we're not gonna make it like an amusement park, we're not gonna get paid to do it, but with the
It's
university.
interesting you say that, but most of the successful ones in the States run a scientific program, but also have public visitors to help pay for it, because
Right?
you charge $5 to come see it for every kid that comes through, and that
Yes.
helps with the power bill and the maintenance,
Okay.
and giving the students a little stipend so that they can,
Right.
be paid to do what they're
Okay.
doing. So it helps,
Yes,
unless you have a big benefactor.
yeah, I think, some costs can be borne by the fisheries department, because they own it. Obviously, they'll have 1 or 2 staff who do some basic work there. But some of the science work will get the students involved. And I was trying to figure out how to run like a gap year program where we bring in somebody to do like 0 to dive master and do some research. And then one of the professors at the university will be their sort of consulting professor while they do research here. And that was how we can sort of get a sustainable program, right?
Does Royal Brunei have any direct flights to LA?
No.
No.
The furthest one we have is London.
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 Yeah, so,
And the other thing I was thinking about is maybe actually doing some coral mariculture and exporting some corals, another way of making revenue, but you pretty much have to have,
It's all right.
be able to get them cost effectively to LA. LA is where everything gets redistributed. They normally get put in tanks there for the aquarium industry. acclimated and then shipped out to the rest of the, buying market or selling coral. But that's another whole industry. There's a lot you can do with that.
Okay, so we'll try and visit and then we can talk a bit more about
You
that.
can also do, this isn't so much for the public, but you can also do the same thing you're talking about on reef balls in situ, which basically means we're planting corals on reef balls and then trimming off the ones that are the more resistant and breeding those, replanting those, planting what's called F2 and F3 generations. So it's
So
kind of
we're
like,
doing the reef ball at sea.
yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So that's what it means in situ, is doing it in place.
Yeah.
Instead of bringing it out of the water, you're doing Americulture underwater. Now, it does require some diving skills, but you can still, do the monitoring, and then take clippings and test which ones you want to replant on the next set of reef balls, the next set of reef balls, and try different corals. And you can actually breed out there. So it's a little more wild conditions, but it's actually sometimes better for the selection process because
Okay,
they're in a condition that they're really going to be facing.
right. Yeah, I guess, that would be one benefit. We're trying to find sort of the best coral to propagate.
Right.
But I think the IBC was really ideal because that's how our outreach can grow.
That's the advantage of being in.
Because I can't bring 50 students a day to the dive site, but I can bring 50 students a day, 5 days a week to this place
Right.
at no cost. They'll drive themselves there with the school bus.
Right.
And that would multiply us. We could easily do 20,000 students a year if we wanted to. I couldn't bring 20,000 this year snorkeling.
True.
Yeah, so that was the idea that we see, and the fisheries are quite keen on it. How much would it cost to set up something basic?
I did a basic tank it was for doing CCA, but it's the same requirements as coral.
CCA stand?
That's crustose coralline algae. That's the crustose coralline algae. That's what the glue that holds your reef together. All that
Okay, yes. Yeah.
red and yellow and pink you see underneath the rocks. That's basically a plant that leaves calcium and builds calcium carbonate just like coral does, and it
Yeah.
glues the reef together.
Yes.
Actually, most of our reefs in the world are made of CCA, not coral. People don't realize it's 90% of the reefs. The coral is the icing on top. It's the mounds in between, kind of like the bay balls underneath the reefs. But anyways, it was a 200-gallon, which would be 800-liter tank. And it was an open top, so it looked almost like a hot tub on the top. It had overflows that go through a fairly sophisticated, there's a mechanical filtration, which is basically like a big piece of toilet paper that's on a roller that slowly rolls so that as the water goes through it, it mechanically takes any detritus out of the water. Then it goes into a sump tank with reverse daylight photosynthesis, which means the top of the tank gets regular sunlight, right? And you can also do it with artificial light if it's inside. And the underside, whenever this light goes out, it turns on, right? Because it turns out in a tank, when you turn the lights on, it changes the oxygen level of the tank and it changes a lot of chemical things. And we don't want that. So we turn it on at the bottom at the same time we turn it off at the top so that it still gets nighttime for the fish, but they don't get the big chemical change that happens because it doesn't happen in the ocean because it stays stable, it's so big.
Right.
So that's kind of the big filtration on it. Then it goes through a big protein skimmer, right? But it's a mechanical one on a pump, a Venturi pump, so it's small and stays underneath the tank. In our case, we had to go through a refrigerating system to cool it off to control temperature. You may or may not need that depending on if the building is air conditioned, but you can't get above about 84 Fahrenheit. What's that in centigrade? Like 28, 27?
I'm actually not.
Look up 84 for them. So you want to keep your water cool enough so that the oxygen goes to everything. And then a big sump pump that goes back at the top, and there's a whole bunch of jets that direct it so that you can control the flow where you want it. In the bottom of the tank, you have a plastic grid, like in the light filter, but there are only 1 centimeter squares. So that when you put the coral in it, they're on little concrete discs or on ceramic discs that have a little peg on them, and you can move those around so that you can constantly farm. Yeah, you don't want it any more than 28.8 centigrade.
Okay.
So if you have to have cooling if not. There's also normally a heater in there if you have cold weather, that if it drops down below 76 degrees, no worries there.
How much did that cost you?
It's about $10,000 and I bought most things used and on eBay by the time it was all said and done.
Yeah, so that place, they have they don't have a big tank, they have some small tanks.
Yep.
They have a open touch pool, they have a bigger tank, but, outdoor they have a bigger tank, so outdoor that's indoor space.
Yep.
Outside, they have 4 big tanks. I think they used to keep some turtles in there to rehabilitate, and then they wash the turtles, turtle rescue, but I think all of them died, and they don't do anything anymore.
And that's a big problem. A lot of these things, they start off great, they look beautiful the first month, and then without maintenance, they start getting algae, and then
Yes.
power goes out for a day and everything
I
dies.
people forget to feed them.
People, or they overfeed them. Somebody comes in and the kid just dumps the whole thing in. So that's one of the reasons that big tanks is kind of nice, because there's some resiliency there. If
Yeah.
something goes wrong, it's not so bad. Small tanks, we've got a tank that we use for testing reef balls that's only 20 liters. And it's got all those same filters in it. But boy, you can't eat 2 flakes of food more than you're supposed to have, and the whole thing can die. So it's very finicky. And if you've got a student there every day, 24 hours a day, great, you can keep those tanks. But the nice thing about those small tanks, if you screw it up, you can clean it all up and start over. But it takes a whole month to get them restarted, because they got to get the new bacteria. So, it depends on sort of, what you want to do, but they're
Yeah.
doable.
Yeah, well, we'll have a look at it, and then we can discuss a bit more about that. And the other one is, there is an indoor aquarium in Brunei. It's about an hour away. When we're gonna visit one of the sponsors there, that's Brunei Shell Petroleum, so it's a
Okay.
Shell. They run that, it's called the Sierra Energy Lab. So they built an aquarium there, there's a big round tank in the middle, I don't know, it's probably 15 feet, 20 feet across, maybe bigger, and then it goes up pretty high. And then they've got a lot of tanks around it, and there are some tanks that are using, so they're saying that if we ever did want to show some of the horror stuff we're doing, they're happy to support us, and they can give us a small display area.
Yep.
So these are the kind of things which I'm interested in, because what can we do that doesn't take too much maintenance?
Yep.
That their guys are doing maintenance daily, so they can just help a little bit. We could put in some of those reef ball molds, and just something to show people to say, hey, this is project ongoing, come and volunteer or something like that, right?
We work with Mo Marine, and she could probably get some videos of that, but we do a lot of, you can take the same reef balls with the microsilica, and they're compatible to put in a big aquarium. So you can send them a full-size reef ball to put in their big tanks, and
Okay.
fish swimming around, and you can put either artificial corals on it if it's not a coral tank, because most tanks are fish tanks. A coral tank takes a lot of light, and
There's
usually
no
coral
coral.
tanks are very shallow.
Yeah, they decided not to put coral, it was too hard to control.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
you run them different, there's a totally different way of running them. If you ran regular tanks with a bunch of fish, you'd have so much algae, because you have to have such bright light. There's so much nutrients to feed the fish. So most of them are just coral tanks only, or fish tanks. They tend to, not too many are mixed.
Okay,
I've run some mixed tanks, but it takes a lot more filtration, a lot more electricity to keep it clean. But anyways, the other thing that I wanted to touch on, if you don't have some other questions here, was you said tomorrow we've got to do the bottom survey. Where's my bottom survey one?
yes, yeah, let's cover that. I've got, a bunch of questions that I can do another session as well. But, I haven't.
Carla, what did you do with the one that was, oh, here it is. Okay. So for the bottom survey, we're going to need these tools tomorrow. We need a depth gauge. You've got depth
Yeah.
gauges because you're divers. We're going to need a small sledgehammer.
Yeah.
Do we have one of those? We're going to need a piece of rebar.
You need, we have some hammers that we use for work, for commercial diving. They have clips on them. I think we have 2 or 4. So ask for one or ask Mark. I've seen them around somewhere, or is it at my house? I feel like I've seen them in my house, but check if you guys don't have it, it's in my house, yeah.
Okay.
You said rebars as well up there?
A piece of rebar,
How long?
about a meter.
1 meter.
It can be
Okay.
shorter if you
So
want,
you
but
wanna check?
yeah, basically, we're going to use that hammer to be checking the hardness of the bottom in the various areas.
Okay.
It's just
How
a
thick?
probe to have.
Whatever.
And then a
And
tape
kind of
measure.
thickness rebar, right?
5/8,
5/8.
number 5.
Okay.
So that's going to be millimeters.
Yeah.
19.
5/8 in Brunei.
What did we decide that was 18?
Good, 5 good.
I think it was 18
Huh?
millimeter, wasn't it,
Yeah, it was 18 because we had that drill bit for that side. 18
Believe
millimeter
so.
about,
Yeah,
for 5
5
eighths?
good is 18 mm.
not the thin one, but the slightly bigger one.
is 5 8 18 mm? I don't think so. 18 is quite big. 5 8 each 2 mm. It says 15.8.
Oh, that's
16,
probably
16.
16,
Okay. So yeah, 5 foot or 16 mm.
18 is three
We
quarters.
can look around,
Which
scrap
is
yard or something. Maybe we'll get a few pieces so the other staff can try as well.
just one per hammer, because you need to have a hammer. So if you've got 2 hammers, get 2 pieces. If you've got 3 hammers, get 3 pieces.
I think we have 2 or 3, then you can get 2 or 3 pieces bars. 1 meter, right? So about 3.
About a meter, yeah, you can do it with half a meter. It depends if you're a good diver to handle more. It depends how soft the bottom is.
So we go out typically during low times? Are we
No,
gonna
no,
be
no,
able to
we're
go?
diving.
We're diving it?
Not low tide.
So this
There
is
is no such
this is
thing as low
tomorrow.
tide?
So we need somebody to look at this in the morning already. Yeah, then you go to Daikyo, the scrap yard, it's just nearby. Find something there,
It's close as possible.
public holiday.
Oh, it's
Okay.
I think there was some rebar over at the shop, wasn't
the
there?
Sultan's birthday tomorrow.
Yes.
Is it birthday tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, happy birthday.
Mark, are you, Mark, can you hear me? Mark,
Yes.
Mark, are you still there?
He's asleep.
Because,
There you go.
Yes, I'm here.
can you get somebody to go to Daikyo now to find, unless somebody at Poni Base can find 5/8-inch rebar that is 5 kun or about 16 mm. We want 3 pieces, each piece about 1 meter. If they cannot find it there, I doubt they have it there, but I have bought before a long time ago. I think it's been used. Then they have to go to Daikyo now before 5. And if it's closed, if we have a friend there, right? He lets us in to grab some things. Yes?
Okay, this rebar.
So we want to have 3 pieces of rebar, each piece about 1 meter. Each rebar, the rebar we want size is 5 kun or 16 mm. Yeah? Okay?
I saw
Yeah.
one.
And we're just gonna be using it to hammer into the sand. Yeah? So.
Yeah, this one is just to test the ground, how hard is it, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's the same one that we used for last time with the Thailand guy to survey the place.
Oh, yes. Yeah. We flew a guy in to help with some mooring block deployments before because he was an expert on that. No, but we want 1 meter. A shorter one is half meter, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it can be half a meter, would be fine. I mean, it's probably not gonna be that deep.
Yeah, but no, those hooks are very short. Those hooks are this.
Oh, my.
Yeah, we need longer than that.
No, it's not that long though.
It is
It's
tight,
not that
because
long.
we're the one who hammer.
Okay, Mark, can you get somebody at Pony Base to check the ADCP hooks? Is it 5/8 or 16 mm? And if we can find any, if not, ask someone to go to Daikyo now. Yeah? What?
Okay.
Okay, all right.
What else before he goes?
And this one might be, I don't know if you've got something like this.
Yes, we did. We've got a lot of tapes.
Tape measure.
Yeah.
I like the fiberglass ones, not the metal ones, because the metal ones rust.
Yes,
if you got it.
I think we have,
I think 4.
three or 4 of these. So grab them all tomorrow, yeah? Make sure,
Anything else?
Tila, and make sure they all have hooks on them, so they're easy to bring in the water, yeah?
And do you have
Yes.
GPS?
Yes.
Okay. Is that GPS compatible with Google Earth?
We've never tried. We
Yeah,
actually
usually
have
there's a-
exactly that model. Most of our GPS are very basic, so they're not gonna,
Well, most of the basic ones are the ones that actually have, if you open up the back, there's a little plug-in and then.
there is a plugin, but nobody ever.
We're about to show you.
I'm about to show you how to use it.
If you, as long as you have that plug,
Yes, okay.
then,
I
and you
have-
might even have one, so.
I have a Garmin, the staff have a Garmin, the basic one. I have a more advanced one, which I almost have so I'll bring it.
Okay.
It's a color chart or something, so.
Okay.
Yeah, that would probably work.
So the basic thing that, and the reason why we're looking for this, the basic thing is when we find a spot, we want to be able to mark it in some way that we can get back to on deployment day and be in the exact same spot. Now, if it's an area that you're used to diving, there's visuals around, you'll know exactly where you're at. If it's out in the middle of sand, it's nice to know exactly where you're going to go back so you can rebuild. you also might want to bring something to mark the site temporarily.
Yeah, that's
Like
fine.
a buoy, you can actually use one of the reef ball buoys and a cinder block in a line, just to temporarily
We're
mark
gonna
it.
use a plastic bottle. When we
Perfect.
put buoys, people cut them.
Come and take it, yeah.
Yes, so, Tina, same. Let's just bring 6 bottles and rope, yeah? We can photo, we can photo.
Natural
Was it
or?
supposed to be candid?
Yes.
Oh.
He started, he's like, I'm not taking a picture.
Yes.
Okay, so those are the basic things. I mean, obviously, if we have some cameras, those are good things to have as
Yes.
well.
I will be taking photos and so am I.
And then
Slates.
obviously, if you have any underwater slates, that's useful for underwater communications and drawing
You know,
maps.
We expect people to be able to draw like that.
Yeah, you gotta be able to draw.
Who
a good
draws
river
like
like that, right?
We have 2, we have 2. Okay, so let's bring 2, if we have more, we have more. I have notes, I have underwater notepad,
Yes.
people want to use it.
Notepad.
Yeah, it's like waterproof paper and booklet.
Do you have any marker buoys like this?
I actually do, we just never use those.
But those are nice if you've only got a GPS mark. As you go with the boat, as soon as you hit that mark, you can throw that over the side and it'll unspin and mark your place. But we also use it when we're marking reef balls.
Oh, that goes down, it doesn't float. That's a sink, that's it.
It floats, but the
Does it
bottom
sink
part
down?
that goes around it is lead. So it wraps around and hold it there and you undo it. It's just a fish marking buoy. A lot of fishermen use it for
Yes.
marking a spot.
Mark, can you hear me? Mark?
I sent it to him.
Yes, yes.
Do we still have that thing,
The Amazon.
the Amazon, we used to have these red one, right? We have 2 of these red
Yeah.
one with a rope around it, we never really use it though. Do we still have them
No,
now?
I don't think so. I haven't seen them for a long time.
Okay, maybe it's in my house.
I don't see them for a long time already.
Okay, if you haven't seen it, it's in my house, maybe ask you for it. Okay, sorry, you went past a few things earlier?
Yeah, do you have Siki decks on your dive boats?
We did not, we gotta make these.
We did it for the.
We did do something.
These are for monitoring. These are not really for tomorrow, but what you basically can put these out in the water to see what your visibility is before you dive
Yes.
and get an accurate,
Yes.
Second.
Second is, you should know how to make that. That's what you do in school, right?
easy to make,
Yeah, oh, you have to make that, okay. well,
easy to make. Yep.
Google it. And then, sorry, can you go back up? Did I miss a couple of things? I saw something else. What's that? Is SMB?
That is what is it
It looks
for?
like a sausage.
Oh, that's just a different type of marking buoy. That's one that you carry with you.
Oh,
Sa-
okay.
Sausage,
marking
we
out.
call them sausage.
Yeah.
A sausage,
Not
yeah.
a Twinkie here? Okay. Yeah, it kind of looks like a yellow.
So how many seconds? Just one is fine? We'll make
One-
2.
one is
Just
fine.
this one. Yeah.
Oh, even this one's acting funny. I'm just not my day for mice. Look at this. I don't know what it's doing.
Oh, my
Oh, we're
goodness.
checking out basketball.
Yeah, get out of there. There we go.
I guess you'll share these notes with us as well.
Yeah,
next time.
well,
But it's
this
like
guide
two-
right here is
37
something that you
pages.
guys should all know about, the step-by-step guide to reef rehabilitation. This is your 200-page manual on everything you would need to know about coral and doing bottom surveys, mitigation stuff. It's a reference guide. I didn't tell you about it beforehand because it's something that won't make sense until you've been trained. But afterwards, you can use this as your reference document. One thing that's neat on, I don't know if I can get over here with all these things out here, but this is like 200 pages in the very end. Show you how I get this thing.
And look, it's fun-filled with activities.
Did you write
There we
this?
go.
He did.
It's been written by a lot of people on our team. I did the first stuff. Anyways, if I could get this thing to go down to it, at the very bottom, there's an index that has all those different kinds of things like we've been using in definitions for each. Let's see if we can get there. This way.
Okay,
And this is
Okay,
the
stop.
way.
okay,
You
please.
can actually
Page down.
press control and down. I think it'll go with it.
Usually I can get, there's a slider over here
That's
that's
not
underneath
working
these
either.
things.
Are you feeling?
Control down is not working.
No? You're gonna put your cursor, put a cursor in the document?
You can move the pin, like
Okay.
the
See,
window.
Cursor's
these are
in the
kind of in the
document and
way.
now try control down.
Or view and then go to
No?
the last page.
Just this.
How about page down?
I try page
See,
down.
we don't have a page down.
It's there. I think you're gonna shift page down on the top. I think.
See, on my function keys,
Yeah,
it's
it
not
doesn't have
there.
that little side one. on.
His
His-
laptop is, well, it's
Well,
just
yeah.
not mine. It's probably a function key or something or another, but go over here.
Normally it's right here, but it's behind those lights.
No, what I'm saying is-
It's going pretty quick. It doesn't look like it's
You can slide this to the key over
Okay.
here.
that's
So
the
you
slide
can.
over there.
Yeah, there you go.
Then-
then
Okay,
go over
now
here.
we got it.
There
Now
you
we
go.
got it. Okay, so
And see, that's probably where the mouse was, and that's why it was doing that. I just,
I still don't even see that.
no, where the index?
No, yeah, I'm looking for the index.
It's at the bottom.
It's at the very bottom.
It's at the bottom. No, see, you've got references and things, but
There's the sand.
Slowly.
Yeah, I've got some.
Okay.
There's the microsilica.
Yes.
This is yes, that says
I
yes.
saw it before.
I did too.
I know I saw it before. Oh, this is, must be, close, B, A, keep going. Keep going,
Oh, these are good for the
Yes,
coral training
yes.
teams.
keep going, keep going. You've got definitions in here, so I think it's before that, right?
There we go. It's after this part.
After that?
It's the coral ethics. That's the coral training. Should be right after the coral team. All the coral training is in here and written out. All the diseases that you want, setting. This is gonna be a big day of training. We're gonna go through a lot of this. It's
So this will be another classroom. It'll take you about 4 hours.
It's really, the coral training is a lifetime training, right? We'll give you guys as much as you want in this week to try to
It's-
demonstrate it.
Yeah, it's
I mean, it
hands-on.
could be a whole week long learning corals. I mean, that's how much there is to learn, but it's just like gardening. You can also learn how to plant a coral in a day.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just a matter of if you want to learn how to plant the whole garden, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that will teach you as much as, and you'll kind of know which team is interested. You'll probably have 2 or 3 people who love coral that really want to spend some time in it. And everybody else will be like, I just want to know what you're doing, that kind of thing. But remember, that's a big part of this training this week, is we're here to give you as much or as little in any one of these fields that you really think is going to work here locally.
Yeah.
So if you think you're going to be planting a lot of corals, we should spend more time on corals. If you think you're going to, obviously, we're not going to be doing submerged breakwaters because of that tide range. So think about the things that you think that you're going to do, and it's the aquariums are the things, or the kid programs you want to do. If it's want to focus on sales and helping you get some big sales for fisheries, we can talk about that. Again, I'm sort of an expert on everything that has to do with reef balls. It's a very narrow field, but I know everything about it. So anywhere you want to go, we're here to help with.
Okay.
And a lot of the stuff you can read on your own too later, if you know the right questions to ask.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I have, because we've gone through corporate beach program a couple times already. So I do know quite a few of those things. So I want to get more your input, like when you see the facility, what can you do with it, when you see the dive site, what kind of coral can you plant? Like I've done a lot of staghorn planting
Well,
before, but I haven't done soft coral, so I want to have a look at that.
And here's the thing about the coral team. We have levels, and you can get certifications in various levels. And there's another question you have to ask yourself, is if you only want to plant here locally, or if you want to be able to join our international teams. So if you join our international teams with the different levels of certifications, we call you when we need, like, let's say a ship goes aground in the Caribbean, and we need to have 50 divers for 2 weeks to do it. We call everybody up and say, hey, we'll pay for your airplane ticket, your hotel, please come join us and volunteer. Depending on your level, you might get paid to do that, or it might just be an opportunity to come travel, to have some fun if you're at the lower level. But, so you don't have to try to do just local projects if you want to get into that area. Now, for the coral training, we set up these tables in a very specific manner. So what we'll be teaching you is the way that we have a specific role in each spot, in a specific way we do it, so that when you join this team, you instantly are familiar with how we do it, and you can fit into the process. And we train you on each different role. So there's one guy that cuts the coral, there's one person that mixes the concrete and can't touch the coral because their hands are dirty. one person that picks the coral up and dips it in the antiseptic solution, one person that has a wet hand that hands it up to that person, then one person that has a stopwatch and records how long that coral is in the plug and then pops the plug. And then you have a runner, sometimes as a snorkeler that runs the corals out to the site, or a runner puts it into a boat and takes it out to the site. And then you have a diver that dives down and plants them. And this all has to happen in the same day. You're going to see it happening when we do this on our day, where we're taking a coral in, cutting it, fragging. Now we might be doing it in mini in a little tiny table.
Yes.
But we're using the same process.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about coral tomorrow, because we can get one of our guys to start working on one.
Okay.
He can make it out of wood, and then.
Yeah, we gotta build it so that we can practice, and we're gonna have to do a dry run where instead of live coral, we're just gonna use a stick from the wall. The land, we don't have to go to the sea, and we'll pretend like we're doing everything until you're comfortable mixing and making a plug. Because when we work with live coral, we won't have the chance to mess up, right? We're gonna have to do the pour just right.
Yeah, so definitely tomorrow morning, we can talk about a table, and then
Okay.
you can get started on it.
Okay.
Joko, the carpenter, the wood guy will get started, and you can have something, might not be perfect, but it's something that we can put on the boat. You know,
It's,
and use.
they're all perfect, and they're all being, when you say it's not perfect, it could just be a small size. And then you know how to make it bigger when you do a bigger project. And it's the size of the table is the number of people you have participating. So the smallest table has 3 people. So you collapse the 2 jobs into each 2 jobs. So the fragmenter and the dipper is the same person, right? So you collapse. And then as you, a big table can have 11 people, and each one has a specialized portion of that job, but they run faster. Because now all of a sudden, all I gotta do is just do this. All I'm doing is
Mixing.
planting, all I'm doing is diving and
Yeah.
putting them on the reef.
Yeah.
And you get a cycle for the day, and you run it as long as you can.
Probably on the Empress, we can fit, our survey table is about 4 feet by 3 feet. You think? Not height, length and width. I would say about 4 feet, 4 feet by 3 feet.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's about 3 feet. Then 4. So we can probably fit a table on the boat 4 feet by 3 feet.
Okay, so for a 4 foot by 3 feet, that's what we call our master table. The
Okay.
problem with the master table is it's gonna produce 500 plugs an hour. Now, you
Okay.
don't have that many holes yet. You gotta build a lot of reef balls,
Okay,
but that's how fast that master table, that master table would have 7 people at it.
okay,
And that would be your average output is you're making 500 of those plugs every hour.
Mm.
So think about, now you might have 20 holes on a reef ball, so you'd have to have hundreds of reef balls because you gotta have a place to plant them.
I guess if it was smaller, it would get less stable as a table.
Yeah, there's also a certain amount of working room, like just to mix the concrete. I've got to have a space where I'm not splashing concrete on the actual live coral. So there's a minimum size of a table. For 3 people table is about this big by this big. So that's about the smallest that we can go. That gives me enough working room. Because I also have to have a coral dip, which is one of those cups that we saw.
Space that you told us was what, 3 feet by 3 feet?
I would call it like a card table. If you know what a card table is, you know, people sit and play cards.
You see this one? This is a different type of table.
That one's a
This
bit
is in
bigger.
Thailand. I can't blow that one up, but try to explain how this one works. This is a floating deck. You know how you have your floating dock and you have your 5 foot hole?
Yeah.
So instead of it being a table,
It's a picnic table.
Yeah.
there's a small table between them, but everything is on baskets and hangs in the water.
Oh.
And that might be perfect for your barge. So this comes up, everything is hanging in the water, you only come up just enough to do the table work, and all those plugs go in a basket and harden, just hanging in the water, and that's your fresh water. You don't have to have coolers and all that other kind of stuff, because the corals are always in the water, but I don't know if you can see it. It's hollow inside, and people are sitting there with their legs in the water, hanging over the water, so they're, got a little table between them.
Yeah.
They're doing all the work.
You can finish your thought. Yeah, my one thing that I'm going to say is you need that shade.
Oh,
That is the
yes.
most,
yeah, the shade
one
is
of the
not for
most
the people, the
important
shade is for the
things.
corals,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, what I was actually thinking is, because when we go to Pilau Rock, we'll see, there is, reefs all around, but there is a small little lagoon area which is about 2 meters deep. And it might be interesting to see if you want to put some, oyster, balls there that people can do snorkeling.
Yeah,
And it's quite a nice, well, it's an area that's sort of a little bit more protected. and we can actually just leave a platform there. Like we'll do out of blue drums and just some wood, and we'll do something that size.
Yep.
And you know, it's a bit easier for us to show kids as well.
Absolutely.
It won't be as rocky on the boat, you know. So
Yeah, and that upper one that I was showing you, that was designed to be, see how that's made out of wood? That one, you bring it up and you put it on the beach during the day when you're not using it. But when you got the kids there, when you're ready to do it, you just go into knee deep of water and you set it in the water. So people are standing up, and I don't know if you can see, I have one here that has a better picture of it, maybe. All right, this one shows you the water level. Okay, so you see the water level here.
yes.
You just.
Zooming in.
Okay. So these are the plugs in the top where you have those plastic cups that the guy on the back side here, he's mixing the concrete. Whoever stands on this side of the table over here is the concrete boss.
Okay.
The other one that's mixing the concrete, this is the person that's sitting here. Down here is your big coral colonies, and they've got a pair of pliers and they're cutting them off and putting them in the bucket. Then he's going to hand it up to this person who dips it into the antiseptic dips.
Yeah.
And puts it, this guy pours concrete in the cups, and this guy places it here, it's a 3-person table, into the cups. Then the cups, as soon as they're done, it's about 30 seconds and they flash, you put them into these trays. These trays slide in and out and they have dive weights on them. Okay, pieces of wood sandwiched together. When the tray is full, they slide out and they go to the diver. The diver can take those diving with them, pop them out, plant them, and bring them back up and slide them back in and rotate them through. Here's a guy out here with a tray. He's letting it hold harden for 20 minutes, and then he's planting on a reef ball. So it kind of gives you an idea of the cycle and why you need the space.
The tray probably would be plastic, or using wooden foot.
This top part,
The top and bottom, the one that he carries all
the
the
tray.
tray, that can be wood or whatever, it's gotta be heavy, so he needs 4 dive weights because it needs to sink. Now, you see that they put some wood in front of here?
Yeah.
This is in case you have waves, if you're only in that much, and that keeps these, because you don't want these things bouncing around. That's one advantage of being in the water, is you don't have as much of a problem with the.
So if we
Surge.
were on the boat,
If you're on a boat, then you're gonna bring all this stuff into coolers in the boat, that's why we have the coolers.
Yes.
So you have a cooler on the boat that becomes where you do your plugging,
Yes.
and you have a cooler on the boat where you do your fragging. So you can see how everything can flex around. You still have the table on top, but all this goes away. You just need a small workspace.
Okay.
And again, it's the number of people you have on the boat as to how you set up. But it's universal. So once you
Right.
learn it, you'll
Yeah, so
know.
probably, we definitely don't do anything at the beach. The waves just, I'm conducive to that.
Okay, then we definitely want to do boat-based or floating-based.
Yes, so boat-based, definitely, that's what we're gonna be doing when we're training.
Yep.
So probably a simple table with just the top part and then the coolers for the bottom bit.
Yep.
Then that one we can discuss tomorrow, and we can get started on straight away. And then, for the floating one, you can show us, because our barge is gonna go and deploy the reef
Be the
balls.
same table, and the same thing, you just load them onto that when you're
Okay.
doing one, you load them on your boat when you're doing the other, and you just don't have to use the coolers when you're on the bar.
Okay, yeah.
So it's perfect,
So
you
you
can
can
go
show
either
us.
way, you can make your
Yes.
choice each day.
And, yeah, when we deploy the reef balls, we could probably stay an extra 20, 30 minutes, get some photos, and then you can show us how the hanging one will work from there. And, so remember as well, the table, when we bring it we're gonna bring it out when we deploy the reef balls. And then we're gonna make sure that we have some pieces of wood to hold the table over the hatch, yeah? Then, what, remember this as well, yeah? Then, we know how the floating one would work, because in the future, I'm thinking that we could just build a small platform and leave that one there.
Yeah, I'm thinking, if it were me, exactly what you're saying, the boat-based one is for doing small runs of coral, like with kids, and when you're teaching people, and you're only doing 10, 20, 30 corals just to plant one ball out. And the floating one is those days you're gonna spend all day and you're gonna plan out big projects and, plant 100 balls with coral in one day. But that's the advantage of this system, is how fast you can do restoration work. So, but what you're doing is a lot of education work, which is more suited for the boat, because you can talk to them, spend some time face to face, maybe take them diving afterwards, maybe not, depends on the day. Gives you a lot of options there. And the kids, you know, I don't know that you can, if you've got big waves, kids are probably not gonna tolerate being on a boat working with their hands and tight for very long. They're gonna get sick.
Yes.
And that may be another thing is everyone needs to know, if you're working on a floating boat, because we're gonna be working with our hands, it's good for even people that don't get seasick to take seasick pills.
Yes.
To think about it, because you know, it's like you're doing an operation, it's like when you don't look at the south shore, you know how much more people can get.
You might want to consider doing the smaller ones when you're first starting out also, because everybody's like kids, you're just learning it. And you've
Okay.
got to practice until you get those balls made and you're able to do bigger projects and plant more coral and so forth. So do the smaller ones.
So the
get
smaller
really
one you're
good at
saying
it.
is about 3 feet by 3 feet, I think?
Yeah, this size table right here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
There's
two
enough.
and a half. I mean, it's,
2.5
2.5
Yeah.
by 3, something
Just-
like that.
Okay.
you know.
You don't
think
want it so
meters a
long
little
that you
big.
can't reach across. So this guy who's mixing here has to be able to reach over with his hand and pour the strip of corals that way. So that's why this is about the right size. I mean, I'll be standing up, so I can actually reach over to here pretty easy.
Okay. Can I have this, is it website? I can share the link. I can, the photo
There
I can
is,
share.
I've got this whole file at home. I just didn't bring it with me. It looks like this is
Oh, you
somebody
just
else's.
Just screenshot this.
Yep, I can screenshot it.
You share,
Let's do.
share it down. Get my email. or share
It's
it
in the,
online,
it's in the
share it
manual
chat.
too. It's just not as good a resolution as this one.
This one, maybe?
Let's see if I can get it with.
All right. I'm gonna show this. Okay, now these are kind of a.
You know?
Okay, and we're doing a dry run. And it's just to give them an idea
What?
of what we're doing. So see those little red
Oh, yeah, how about that, Carl? We do the,
new Caledonia. All right,
why don't you pull that up and just
So see
play that
how
on the big
everybody-
screen? I am here. Hold on.
Well, I don't know if you have this somewhere.
Yeah, New Caledonia, I do.
I put mine under coral table, New Caledonia coral table, but,
Here's part 1. Here, let me just play that here. That's a
Yes.
perfect
we've got
video.
multiples.
This is a training video too, so this,
Who's this?
That cut back. Yeah, so you want to put your water in there and then add your adva. You're doing 2 lines. on
Marbles in the hole.
Don't stop.
Ouais, 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 c'est pour les photos, donc comme il n'y a pas plus de merde que sur un téléphone.
so his drops is the advent flow, same thing that you would
Okay.
make in a reef ball, right?
Mais encore, on va remarquer.
That's the advent flow
Wonderful.
and the flow.
You need to have that as well? Okay.
Because it's got to get around the coral and make it really
C'est bon.
Everybody ready?
Mixing.
On est obligé de garder les mains comme ça, là?
Holler out mixing, that tells your team. Mixing.
What are you doing there, Vincent? What are you
Supposed to be
doing?
mixing much faster. You see?
Mixing.
First time.
Mixing.
Pour-
Pouring, it's when you drop.
Yeah. Mixing, mixing,
So
mixing.
make sure you get it all the way around the edges, and then you're going to go to the middle. So keep mixing, because if there's any concrete on the side, you want to drop it.
No, that's Emma.
Yeah, then you
You
can
want
go
it to
have
be very sticky.
you can have your hands in here with your two fragments,
That
right?
is-
That you would hold from the cutter.
No, we had,
You hold from
Todd
the
and
whatever you're gonna
in
use.
New Caledonia,
Take these.
You gonna use those guys? All right.
New Caledonia.
That's Carla.
They speak French.
Do it fast.
Yeah, not really any cut-ins there, but whatever. All right.
Okay,
It looks very watery.
Pouring.
Pouring.
That means you take your hands out. Go ahead and come up.
Ouais, tu peux enlever tes mains maintenant.
If he's pouring, you can.
Comment ça, je peux enlever mes mains? Bah, tu me donnes les fragments. Quand je dis pouring, c'est que tu
Ah,
passes
pouring,
à-
je
Try to
l'enlève.
get coral.
Ah non, c'est pas moi qui fais ça, c'est toi, sorry.
Right hand,
Okay.
So that, yep.
Ouais, voilà.
dipping in the antiseptic, drying off the coral.
The girl screaming.
Okay.
Oh.
It's
Put it in there, wrong.
Il est où?
This thing
Hold-
is.
Ah,
Put
mais il est
your-
passé
put
au
your-
oreille.
put your wrist
Mais non,
up.
mais il faut que tu le tiennes.
Don't dip it twice. Put your wrist down and put your wrist on the thing and just rest and hold.
Prends l'autre.
Ah, mais là, déjà, il y avait des...
You hold it like this.
So that it
So you're not
Try not to
shaking.
go up and
Yeah,
down.
you hold it
Use your put your wrist on the table.
Flashes.
Faut pas bouger. En fait,
That's
There you
when
go.
we know that it'll
Yep.
set
faut
up
pas que tu secoues en même temps que t'as le truc dedans parce que sinon tu montes et tu décides.
hydraulic
C'est les deux mains normalement.
the mix.
This one is
Faut
going
faire en
to
même
be
temps.
easy.
Hey, you've got the other one
Depends on
holding
your
it.
Yeah, yeah, it's
But
good.
it should be about a minute.
And,
30 seconds.
And it's lots of water inside because I shake it, but it's
So now he's holding.
Uh,
The water gets inside.
yeah.
And we tried this.
When you dip it,
different
do your
types
fingers
of
go
coral.
into
We
the
just
water
picked
as
up
well?
dead coral,
Yes.
So when you
knots,
fill up
sticks,
the,
things like this.
make sure you fill it up
At
all
the
the way
top.
up to the top. Yeah.
But you want to try to keep that in,
So
you don't want to
as
go
fast
hand
as
in hand.
possible.
First one's flashed.
First one flash.
Use them too, so you won't need
Probably
to
let go of the second.
That's the
Flash, c'est moi?
Ah, c'est toi.
And so you pop, reach underneath, pop it out.
Tu prends par en dessous, voilà.
That's on the side.
Very gently,
gently.
Is this
and you want to put it in the water carefully so it doesn't put smoke in the water.
I don't see if it's good for this one.
Yeah, this one
That's
here,
probably
we're
just the
pretty
water
separate.
on top. It's
the
probably
buckets
flashed.
keep the coral separate?
Yeah, because there
Little
was,
smoke.
some
If
water.
I leave it,
Wait a few more seconds because hers smoked.
Ouais, smoke.
You see the smoke that came
Ouais,
up?
Ah, yeah.
That means it's a little early. It won't hurt the water, but
So he says, flash.
Everybody would look, because
Ouais.
maybe like,
Regardez.
Ça m'a l'air un peu liquide encore.
beaucoup d'eau encore.
you feel like we're not
So,
this
I think it's gone. And you can see it by just looking at
En
it.
fait, c'est ça le plus long. En fait.
Because I think there is
When we
C'est
add
parce que
much
j'ai pas
water,
mis assez.
much water
Là, j'ai, tu vois,
added with
j'ai
the
mis
coral.
trop d'eau. J'ai mis l'eau qu'il fallait, mais par contre, j'ai pas assez rempli ici. Là.
Dripping.
Ouais.
Tu vois, quand j'ai fait
Hydraulic.
les deux, là, les
So
deux
how
doses.
much is that?
While
Oh,
you're
okay.
mixing.
I'd say
Il
let
a
go.
trop
Et
liquide.
j'ai
Right to
poussé
let
le
go.
tout, par conséquent, c'était trop liquide.
It was a hollow
Let go.
metal. We found it in
See if
the
it
garage.
just let go with your fingers, kind of pull them
Moi, je
away.
peux peut-être.
Something
gonna
else
sink.
we could, draw and write on
Si,
it.
si, c'est bon, regarde.
Faut attendre.
Et après, faut attendre.
Keep it shaded.
And it's fine, aluminum is
You want
fine.
to put another one?
And
Nope, that one's already, if you try to put it in, it'll just make a dip in the concrete and it won't seal the bacteria.
It's too late now for this one.
Yep.
Okay.
And the table boss should tell you, don't plant that one. What you can do is reach over and take that one off the table so they don't accidentally do it.
this is why I take
It might work. Now, see how if I put my finger in there,
nice hands.
it started. Yours didn't go quite as fast. You might have had a little too much water, or the water might not be hot
I
enough.
didn't put enough cement.
Ah, you didn't put it all the way to the
Yeah,
top.
exactly.
Yep.
And for the two those.
Yeah, it's
Multiple rolls.
usually use a level and level that
Yeah,
cement
yeah,
off.
okay.
So even like if your thumb is
Is it, so, and we've got some on the boat when we did this for real, with
Yes.
real coral.
Yeah, if you can share some link, it's easier to show the carpenter.
I don't know that he has all of them, because I was taking the photos and the pictures, and I have way more videos that didn't go to YouTube, but.
Todd, how old is that photo of you?
Which one? That one?
Yeah.
Oh, that's from Thailand, so that must have been 15 years ago.
Ty has the same one, so. I was like, that's still really youthful,
Alright,
so
there's
what
a-
you say? On your
My Gmail one is like.
Dry.
Here's part 2.
Donc moi, je me lève les mains aussi.
I believe all
We moved people off, oh, see how the cooler's propped open? That's important, so for your coolers, we need to find something that'll keep them propped open. Oh, okay.
Ça sent le bain de bouche, tu sais, c'est la même odeur que le bain de bouche.
Ah ouais?
You don't want it to come completely off, because then sun.
Two of
It depends on your shape, yeah, as long as you've got something to prop it open, a towel or something, rubber.
So all these
I can,
reach right by.
You can put sand in the bottom of the mold and bigger at the top.
Aïe, aïe, aïe. Ah là là, gaspillage, gaspillage.
Remember, we don't know how big the holes are on the reef wall, so we can make.
no, that was,
C'est vrai que c'est pas terrible en fait.
Mais non, parce qu'en fait, il vaut mieux. Ouais,
That's the
voilà, c'est ça.
hydraulic.
Il est bien plein, c'est mieux.
Oh, never mind, that's their hydraulic.
Oh, that's wet it.
we had to bust it. No, they had to measure it.
Measure.
I don't look dry.
No, it's dry. How?
Dry. Oh, I see. Oh.
Terrain, Vincent, ça c'est trop large pour la taille du truc. Tu sais, quand je fais de la-
So they're measuring, so we need a little, well,
That's what I use the scale for to measure.
Tu veux un truc de raclette là? Un petit truc de raclette?
Moi je te dis, moi je fais ça avec les sticks de.
and again, it's ratios, you have this much this and this much this.
Tu mélanges mieux.
We're gonna be making the exact same mix design, except for the rock and sand, with cement, water, and microscope. So that's why they have that little tiny ramp feel. So when you make concrete like this, you do it again, make the big stuff, because it's not so accurate to measure
Okay,
tiny portions.
so, we're gonna pack as well. So for tomorrow, we have everything we need, right? We're gonna get these things ready for tomorrow's site survey. And then for finding the coral, like looking for coral, setting up coral nursery, there's nothing extra we need to bring. We just dive into having to look for some coral rescue, I guess, right?
Yeah, what you can do, and this is not a bad idea depending on where we're gonna do this, but you can also bring up a piece or two of coral that we're gonna work with, put it in the cooler, bring it over to where we've surveyed the site where you're gonna put the reef balls, and we can make a small nursery. And then the day that we come back out, we dive down and get that particular fragment and start working with it. That way we don't have to hunt for the fragments. Because remember, we have to work with imperiled coral. We can't just go snip a coral off a perfectly healthy coral.
Yes.
We have to go around and find one that's already broken off.
Yeah.
You know, one of the rules that I use for the non-professional team, for the volunteers, which is what we'll be operating, is we collect corals with no tools in our hand. That way we're not tempted to sneak one and break one off, right?
Yeah.
So I figure if you can bring it back with your hand, you probably didn't steal a real
That's the same
coral,
we
right?
did before as well. We would find corals that are still alive that are rolling around in the sand, and we bring it over.
Yeah, exactly. Now, once you get to the expert stage, we may be taking some specifics, but then it requires you treating the one and taking care for both things, and then you have to have a reason for getting that particular coral, genetics and stuff.
Okay.
Yep.
One thing that we had, that I'm noticing from the video, this is why they're so important, are the thermoses for the hot water, and then we had something for the cool water.
Okay. So when we mix our concrete, we need to make that concrete go off in about 30 seconds on the table. And the reason is, we put that coral in, we can't put it back in the water until it's splashed. Right? So when we take the coral out of the water, we all hold our breath. We got to get it back in the water before we let our breath out. So that means we got about 3 minutes. So if it doesn't go off fast enough, when we mix our concrete, we're going to use hot water, and that'll make it go off faster. But if it goes off too fast, then we're going to use cold water, and that'll
So
make
you
it
want the
go off
coral
slower.
to be out for 3 minutes.
Well, it's as fast as the table's moving. So let's say we're just doing one coral. It'd be nice if it just went off in 10 seconds, right? Because you have already go and down.
Yeah.
But let's say we're doing 10 corals and 2
Flush,
people, and we
yeah.
got 4 hands. We gotta have enough time to get all those planted. So now we might want 1.5 minutes. We're always wanting, and so the table boss is gonna be using the cold or the hot according to his team. It's also how fast the team gets going. At the start of the day, we'll just start 1 coral at a time. By the end of the day, we're doing
Fasting.
20 corals at a time.
Yeah.
Boom, 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 and everybody's grooving,
Going
and
there.
so you're going much
Going
faster.
Yeah.
So the table boss, that's why that's the most important position. You're controlling the flow of the table by how fast you're mixing the concrete and how accurately you're getting it where we don't have to wait around for it to harden. And then some corals, like soft corals, have to be very liquidy because they got to grab onto a really smooth piece of woody stem. And so those take a lot longer to harden. So we pretty much have to do soft coral one at a time. And then some coral that's nice and rough and tumbly, we just got to barely get enough in there that we can get it and it'll go off really fast. But if it goes off too fast, you got to put the last coral in and you hit hard mud. You're like, whoops. So you put that one back in the water, clean it off, and you try again with the next round. So that's the other thing is sometimes we don't like to have corals out in the water more than once if they're a sliming coral, and that's like the Acropolis. So those are what we consider a more advanced coral because we want to only have them exposed to the air one time. So even when we take them out of the water, we shove the cooler under the water and have the diver transfer it into the water so we don't have to use that one exposure to get it onto the boat. And then they cut it underwater, and then they hold it underwater until the person says it's time to put it in. That way we don't take it out and then, oh, I had a bad mix, and have to put it back in.
For some coral.
That's for sliming corals.
Sliming coral.
You know how like a crocodile, when you take it out of the water, it'll smell and get all slimy. That slime protects it, which we want it to be on there, right? But if you do it a couple times, it won't make any slime anymore, so it won't have that protection. So those slimy corals, we want to only expose them. Every 12 hours they can recharge again. That protection is usually for low tide. They evolved where the tides would go down once a day, and once a day they would slime. There's also sunblock in the slime. The slime corals, we don't have to worry as much about the roof as long as they're slimed. But if I make a mistake and I have to do it twice and I don't have a roof over it, now it can get sunburned because it doesn't have that slime. So even though you see people holding it out in the sun and say, oh, it's fine, well, maybe it was only a one-time exposure. If they do it twice, they can kill the same coral and the same thing. It's like having your baby without having a coverall on. So there's a lot of little tiny things like that that we're going to learn.
Many variables.
Yeah, and they're simple, and most of it's common sense. You know, but unless you've seen it, and it's same kind of like the same as a reef coral, unless you've killed a coral by accident, you're not going to know. So we've killed a lot of coral, unfortunately. We want to teach you to not ever have to kill any coral.
Yeah.
We've killed a lot of coral as well in our first programs.
We're now at 90 to 95% survival rate is what our teams operate.
That's such a
which
really
is pretty hard to do.
There's a lot of places where it's 50–60% success rate, some of the programs.
Yeah, and for us, that was, we required higher, only because when we started, we were at 20%, but we've worked our way up. And that's where you get these variables too, like when everybody comes, if you use sunblock, it has to be oil-free sunblock, right? And you can't use any bug spray, right? So you sort of gonna have to be careful, make sure we're not doing this at sunrise or sunset in the mosquito area, because there's no sunblock and a bug while we're doing it. Yes, Cole?
I just wanted to show you this. You see how this table is on a table?
Yeah.
So those cups drop down.
Yeah.
So you need an area, and then they're able to, and then you'll see it later on when she flashes corners. And then he puts in the coral floats. And then when.
Oh, Richie, this is really fun. Tira, come and have a look at this. We could probably do this easily without a lot of work.
At this point, okay, now they're picking them up from the side. I don't recommend it. I recommend going from underneath and pushing up gently, because if you go from the side, it can squish the cement. So go from underneath. So you need a couple legs. You need some legs under there.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. So
you can see it.
I can tell you guys now.
It's a table.
We're going tomorrow. So
or if you want to go directly into the table, fine.
Yeah. So we already have a survey table, right? So we're going to bring the survey table, and then we can just we have the 4 chopping boards. We're just going to join the 4 chopping boards together that are about that size, and we'll just have legs on it, and it'll stay on the survey table.
Okay. And then we know what
and
hole size to drill.
Tell us what size to drill.
We have the molded stuff. So
Okay, so we can tell and then we can do that tomorrow. So that will take us 2 hours to get it done. Because we have to table them. Okay.
And we'll need a marker, likes it marked. We'll need paper, pencil, or.
Yeah, so each zone will mark one side of the table that we always use for the coral mixer, one for the wet can, one for the dry, where everything goes, and mark every table anywhere in the world the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that even if you speak a different language, you know if I'm standing in this spot, this is what I do. Right, so it's just a common sort of language.
You guys need light here for tomorrow, right?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, just get this size and get that ready as well.
So Todd, this is the concrete mix design calculator.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had a chance to do it, but you start with the open save tab. You just pull down Poni Marine from the list of all of our other clients. Once you get that one in there, you just do open one time. That will load all of your data in, right? So you'll have to save it when you change anything here. You then can go to the batch size and choose what balls you're making for that particular day. Right, if you wanted to know exactly, let's say you were doing 2 low pros, 2 oysters,
1 bay ball,
and 1 bay ball. That would tell you that's how much cubic meters of concrete you need to mix.
Yeah.
Right. So then once you got that, you can go to your mix design, and it would tell you exactly how many pounds of cement, how many pounds of aggregate that you would need for that much. Right, and then you can go to your ingredients and change it. So for example, you don't have Portland type 2, you have Portland type 1, so we need to change that for you. So you've got type 1. Yours actually has a low filler. So you're a generic Portland, okay? And you're now using 3/8 inch limestone. Water, you're using fibers, not strengthening fibers, no sand substitutes, no rock substitutes, no accelerators, no liquids for on site, no air entrainment. We're doing a balanced rock, regular mix design,
Well, you're doing 2-2-1.
good quality. You're actually doing excellent quality. So we're going to go to 0.4.
What is the invalid time? Oh, there.
Yeah, different things in here. Okay, the slump is how liquidy the concrete's making. All right, so it will tell you in this, any of these things here, you can always find out more information about, but it'll tell you here, like slump.
You might have to scroll.
And that's for mini up to ultra, marginally all sizes.
It's probably all the way up to the.
Yeah, 7 inches is just fine. Standard toolkit, general use. This is your temperature is about right, and you're mixing by hand. All right, so now we go back.
You got a mixer, is that still considered by hand?
That's considered mixing by hand. Yeah, that means you're dosing stuff yourself. And dosing stuff yourself is pretty much the same, but you'll tend to use a little more flow than if you were in a truck. There's some complex reasons for that.
For the demo, we're actually only gonna need concrete for 1 low pro and 1 oyster.
Okay.
Should we bring the whole concrete mixture over there, or should we just mix it by hand?
If you want
Because we're
to,
gonna do the demo in front of people.
here's what I would recommend you do. Whatever you're gonna do for the demo, and mixing by hand is a good idea if you've got a drill mixer. Didn't see if we saw one of those. Or if you want to mix by hand, you can actually do by hand, but I would recommend we do one together, not in front of them. Make sure the guys can do it cleanly and nicely. The bad thing about the mixer is it's noisy.
Yes.
The good thing about
Yes.
the mixer is it's consistent.
Yes.
So it's a trade-off. Now, if you had like a small electric mixer, maybe,
Like
you can
those
borrow,
drills.
they're
with
the
those-
same kind, but just a smaller, like I've got one that's only 1/10 of a yard. I use it for kids, it just
Yeah.
plugs into the wall, and it's not nearly as much noisy, and it's got a mixture about this big and this wide, and I can
Do we
only do
have
like
that?
a
Can
half
you
a bag.
check toolbox? Can you check? A small electric concrete mixer.
Another
We
thing you
basically
can
hold
use-
it. We'll see if
It's
I
like
have
a
a
cake
picture of
mixer.
it.
If
See if
if
I have
you've
a
got an electric drill,
Yeah.
and at the paint stores, sometimes they have, it's basically a drill bit that's got on the end of
Yes.
it, a paint mixer.
Do we have that? Last time Cypher was selling it, I don't know when I bought it. We didn't buy it, right? Because I said I have no use for it. They use it to stir the paint.
Yeah, and they make them for mortar mixers, people that do mortar like tile mix, and it's got a little bigger one, and those are pretty good. They're not with kids though. Surprisingly, they can kick back and break your wrist really easy, so you need to really hold control of it when you're doing it,
Are you
so.
taking notes for us? Because we need to,
This
yes,
is kind of like what he has. you know?
yes.
You just hold on to it like this and then.
It mixes in a bucket.
And so 1 low pro and 1 oyster. Will you need maybe about 4 buckets?
At least, yeah,
Probably.
at least.
Yeah.
Or could we mix it in a
I mean,
wheelbarrow?
the oyster is really small, but the low pro does take a little bit.
Or could we mix it in a wheelbarrow?
Do you have like a dunk tank, like a 100-gallon dunk tank, or, you know?
It's
what I mean?
it's really hard to show off the magic of the chemicals. I mean, if you're trying to impress,
Demo, right?
that's where it's nice to have that drill mixer, because so when they can see, when you put that flow in, it just flowing all of a sudden.
Yeah.
It makes it a show.
Yeah.
Makes it a little bit more.
So we want
Demo, like.
a drum.
A drum or a drill mixer that.
Well,
I could consistently run a drill mixer in a 5-gallon bucket. Mixing by hand, we could practice, but the guys would have to practice. and get good at it.
so I think it's fine because there's gonna be a lot of important people around. We're gonna invite some of the consuls and embassies as well. So we can just find out first if we have the paint mixer. I think we didn't buy it. So find out if they have that, how much is it? Can you show what that photo, Carla? And if not, we buy the electric mixer, the one you say is very small, just a small electric mixer to plug into the jack.
And you know, that small electric mixer is not bad to have around the yard for doing even smaller balls on a regular basis. It's quiet,
Yes.
or quieter.
Yes.
And it doesn't have the problem that I always have with those diesel ones, especially for long term, is it's a lot of maintenance. You gotta have, if you're doing a demo and the motor stops, you're not gonna get it started in the time of the demo.
Yeah.
So Murphy's Law, it only happens when, really important people come home.
Yes. Okay.
But that's up to you. I mean, we can adjust anywhere. You can do it by hand certainly, but it can be a lot messier and slower.
So yeah, if we don't have a small electric function mixer, we'll get a paint mixer drill. But what is the size that we're trying to mix these things in?
Well, let's go back to the mix design calculator. If we go to the back sides, and let's say we only want to do
Some of them.
Zero bay ball,
0 bay balls. And
1 low pro and 1 oyster.
Square.
1 low pro.
I don't know.
Oh, that's 21 low pros.
21. And not 2, but 1.
Yes. You know, is fine. This is
So,
okay. Rounded
All right,
one.
so we only
This
need
one, okay.
0.19 cubic yards. That seems too much. We must have a bay
And,
point.
Yeah, they do that.
good size.
0.
If you find that, fantastic. If you don't, then this will have to.
Yeah,
go to a
only
drill. Yeah.
0.06 cubic yards. Let's look on the mix design calculator to see what that is. That means it's
This is the, see that.
12 liters
Plug
of
it in, and you hold it like this.
Portland,
Yeah,
That drills.
32 liters
But I
of
do not know
gravel,
if you have
Yeah.
anything like that.
16 liters of sand. Now we're doing those 2-2-1, so it's probably going to be more like
See, they have.
20 of sand and 20 of rock, and we're not actually following this
oh,
ratio.
okay. So it'll be a 20 gravel, 20 sand,
Yeah,
and then 12 liter Portland will be more like 10.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then 3 gallons of water, so that kind of gives you an idea how big it would be.
3 gallons of water. Because our ratio just now was 1.5 buckets of water. Well, that 1 bucket of water, I don't know how many ml it is. I would say that's about 5 liters. That bucket.
Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry, that's not water, that's Portland.
I was gonna
3
say,
gallons of Portland.
that just sounds like an
Water
awful
is
lot of water.
only-
Water,
Water is only.
1.88.
1.88 gallons or 7 liters of water.
7 liters of water. But we'll check that against our ratio that we did just now as well.
Yeah, well,
But-
it's 12 to 7, so, water's a little less dense, so that's about right.
So that means there's 20, 40, 50, about 60 liters. So we want something that holds 60 liters.
Now, remember, that's a standard size ball, and your molds are a little lighter, the small ones are about right on spec. It's only the
The
bay
oi-
ball
the
that's
oyster
getting
ball?
heavier than it should
So-
be.
The low pro is still gonna take 3.
Yeah, the
maybe
low
3
pro and
buckets,
the oysters
3
are
or
on
4
spec.
buckets.
We want a drum. I was saying, could we use the wheelbarrow and dump everything and put the mixer into the wheelbarrow, but it doesn't have to be that.
You
high.
can, I mean, we can even do it by the shovel
You're-
with the wheelbarrow, it's just.
That's a small, that's a
So
small
even-
wheelbarrow.
But we only about 60 liters. That will probably take about 60. So it'd be nicer to have like a blue drum, right? Those blue drums are 200 liters. We can get some
was
smaller blue
cut in
drums. And we can cut it. There we go. We have actually some blue drums around.
Oh, could you? Okay.
Yeah, and then we can just cut it, and then that will bring it down to about 100 liter. 60 liters would be about half that.
I mean, I'll tell you this, Kathy and Larry went out to Africa, where'd they go exactly?
Yep.
And they dug a hole in the ground in the sand, and they mixed in there.
Yeah, I'm not saying you can't, there's a million ways to do it.
There
Okay,
is.
We're,
It was a big pit,
We're-
like this,
we're
and of
in-
course, you're not getting everything, but.
we're in the fisheries jetty, concrete floor. They're not gonna like it if they go home.
So, but my point is, right, I mean,
Yeah.
if you have a drum and
Yeah.
you can lock some of it
Yeah.
off, like the top third of it,
Yeah.
you could probably mix in that. It's
Okay.
just gonna have a really
So
sharp
we'll-
edge,
We'll
really sharp
probably
edge.
plan, to do like 100 liter. We'll have a little bit extra rather than running out.
Have you thought about just inviting them over to your area, because you're gonna have all those,
Sorry?
have you thought about inviting them over to your place instead of setting up over there? 'Cause
Yeah,
you really do
moving
have a
everything
nice
and
setup
setting
now,
up.
you're gonna have reef
No.
balls there.
So, there
Um,
might be a chance that there's anywhere from 20 to 50 people.
Okay, maybe you should bring a couple of smaller balls over just so you can.
Yes,
have some-
so what we're doing, what we're doing is our team is gonna set up, we'll have a bunch of the schedule with you guys.
Yes.
So the day before the demo, our team, the
Let's
area is
do
gonna
it.
be set up. So our team is gonna fabricate, one bay ball and one low pro already.
Okay,
And then during the demo day, after your presentation, we're gonna demold the bay ball and the low pro. And then we're gonna make one low pro and one oyster.
I got you. So they see the whole thing in
They
one
see the
thing.
whole thing.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Great.
so that's why, we didn't wanna do too much work, we wanna show them a little bit, so the low pro and the oyster will work. They'll be like, this is what we do for kids, the bay ball is what projects could look like, and we got some bigger ones, you know?
Question, would they be opposed to staying nice and clean, but watching it all happen right here, you know, like video
Screen.
on screen versus moving everything to them?
I think we wanna show them, I think they like this kind of things.
Okay.
Yeah, they like the demo, and we're gonna have media around, they can take
press,
photos.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
all right, it's gonna be a lot to take over there, that's all I'm saying.
You could even, if you wanted to
A
the
lot.
night before, on the small oyster ball, you could do a miniature layer cake.
Yeah. Yeah, we
Little
could,
small
That's-
rocks,
that's
just do
only
the
gonna
whole thing in
be
miniature.
One or
Yes.
two
So you'd
layers.
still be able to pick it up and move it easy.
Yeah,
yeah, because we'll have one oyster ball that's free, one oyster ball mold that's free. Yeah, so we could do a layer cake there, and, yeah, okay,
Good.
let's do that, guys.
it's
So
gonna
we're
be like the
doing
bottom layer, the top
Three
layer.
molds the day before, one bay,
Yeah.
one low
This-
pro, and one
this
oyster.
tall. That oyster.
Oh,
ball
you know
is
what?
this tall.
I've got one of my desks that's big as
Watch.
Um, So, sorry, we can do the sand layer cake on the low pro.
Any size.
Yeah, because it's a bit bigger. Okay, so we're still gonna stick to the same. We're gonna do. Well, it's nice when you see the oyster. Okay, so on the day before, we're gonna do one low pro, one bay ball, one low pro, and one oyster. Okay? And the low pro is gonna be a layer cake.
We need to tie in that Antica. It was one of our projects where we did everything. You're one of those guys that gets into everything. We could have done everything together. Great project. We planted coral, we did every size, every
Yes.
anchoring technique, it was no demand. It was basically we had a millionaire, he was actually a Ponzi schemer, and he had $3 million. He said, do whatever you want. And he called me up and said, Mr. Barber, I'd like to have 3,000 reef balls. How much will that cost me? I said, oh, we could do that for about 100,000 US dollars. I said, that would take us about 9 months or so. He said, well, why would it take 9 months? I need it in 30 days. I said, well, because it would be too expensive for me. He goes, Mr. Barber, I didn't say how much money mattered. I wanted okay, we'll do it in 30 days.
Bet the price went up.
But the price went up, yep.
Yeah.
So we had to mobilize so many people from around the world. We had 50 molds going 24 hours a day, 4 turns a day. Every 6 hours, we were opening, demolding, and putting together for 3 months straight. And put all those in and plant every single hole with a coral. And anchor them all down, and each one had to be custom fit for a particular bottom.
You can actually demold after 4 hours?
6.
6 hours.
That's
Well,
the fastest you can do it.
There's things that you do to
You do
let
something
that happen.
special.
Well, part of it was, you know how you guys were taking off side bladders?
Mold, what, panels?
When you mold, right now, we're pulling off everything all together, right? But to do it faster, you have to take off every pin and leave the balls in and very gently take the side off and then take each ball out individually. So it's 10 times as much work. But they had hired 75 laborers to run those 50 molds. Now, these were Antiguan laborers, so half of them were in the woods smoking, the whole time, so they were rarely around, but they were hard, a lot of work. Crazy project. You would love it.
Yes.
So you're like, you're good with this, you're good with this.
That's something you can
Did
look
get a
at on the
photo?
world mapping system, Antigua.
Okay,
So,
so can I get a quick count if I was gonna do one bay ball, one low pro, but the low pro is gonna be a layer cake, and one oyster?
this one doesn't do layer cakes.
So we're just gonna estimate
specifically,
it.
yeah. Well,
What
maybe
you
it
should,
does.
what you should probably do is for that one, Todd,
Put it with the base.
well, what you do is
You
just
manually type in the calculator amounts. The way
I
that
would-
the
I would-
layer handles it.
add a mini bay ball or something like that, because you need the sand and the.
Just so you know, when you use this thing, you've got here an adjustment where you
And
can
the
add tenths of
cement.
the yard
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
for specific amounts. So you can go down to those little small size.
But you don't need, and you do actually need everything.
But you just gotta get this cubic matters to match the total number that you want. And when you make your layer cakes, you also have to start measuring how much concrete you're using, because the weight is not, it's usually 1.5 times the weight, but a lot of that can be of the rock. And you're not mixing the rock up. If you use really big rocks, you'll use less concrete.
Okay.
But if you use really skinny rocks and make your own, then you're gonna use more concrete. So you gotta look at what you're actually making in those walls.
Okay.
According to the style you're making. That rain?
Yes.
Yeah, so you should just add a bay ball and.
So anyways, what numbers were you looking for?
1 bay ball, 1 low pro that's a layer cake, and 1 oyster. And that way we know how
Or
big of a
just
cup.
add a.
We'll call
low
it two layer cakes
pro.
then,
Two low pros
or 2 low pros
to
to
make
make it
a
Okay.
one
like a
layer
double
cake.
size.
It's kind of double.
No.
Nope, nope, you have
No.
21.
There's 2. Okay. So there's your cubic size, and we got it to
Yep.
the mix design. There's your amounts over here.
You might want to.
And these, by the way, this is volume and this is weight.
This is important.
They are the same, and this is important. So
They're not the
35
same.
liters of concrete is 116 kilograms, depending if you're weighing with a scale.
We're actually using kilos.
If you're using kilos, then you go over here.
Okay, so you gotta tell me for the other one again now. So it's 116 kilos
Yep.
for, correct? One, because we buy the, actually, you know what? We're dumping it by the bucket, so that's by volume, that's not by weight, is
Yeah,
it?
that's by volume.
Okay, so go back to liters then, yes.
Yeah.
So 45 liters, yeah, 45 liters. And then next one is
The next one is your rock, and that would be 123 liters.
123 liters rock, yeah.
Next one would be, now remember that your rock and sand are the same, so you gotta average these two. So add 184 divided by 2 would be your rock
It's
and sand.
185.
So 90.
Yeah.
90 liter rock, 90 liter sand.
Yep.
And 45.
And if you ever get the
liter-
round rock, you can go back more towards these ratios if you wanted to.
Okay.
And then
So
your
that's
water
about-
is 27.
Okay, and for, because this one we're gonna do the day before, nobody's watching us.
Right.
Would we do it, we could practice, I guess. in the
That's what I
drum.
would do. Let's
Yeah.
practice there, make
Yes.
sure we got it right.
And, but our drum, a big drum is what, 200 liters, right? If, we're looking here at 90, 91, 80 plus 45,
There's
225, so
nothing-
we'll probably bring 2
There's
drums.
nothing wrong if you want to, of doing it in 2 batches, even with people around, do it twice if you have to, right?
Yes, 2
So
batches.
smaller if you can. Now, it is a little bit, you have to measure more accurately when you do really small batches, right? Because
Okay.
it's not as forgiving
Okay,
if you're a little
so
off.
this one, you're probably gonna give us, because we're gonna make sure that it looks good when we demold it.
I can,
So you're gonna watch us closely on this one.
So.
and if
with-
you want to, I can always take over the mix if I think, like, I'll let your guys do it, and if it looks like they're getting a little off, I'll just kind of jump in and act like I'm a
Yes.
dumb American and take over, and they won't know that it was any mistake, we'll just make it look like
Okay.
trying to show off, right?
So you're gonna be.
Make sure we don't break one.
You're either gonna be scooping out of this drum,
Yeah.
okay, that you've mixed in.
Yeah.
Or you're going to, you can't pour it, you can't pick it up and pour it. So you're either gonna need shovels, multiple shovels, okay? Or you're going to need,
Those small buckets will be
strong,
fine.
well, they were breaking.
The small ones are
They
breaking.
were breaking, so
Oh, so we'll
Be-
shovel
be-
it out and put it into the buckets.
you
and
need
we'll carry the
something to
buckets.
get it out of the drum. We have to be extremely cautious about the corners of the drum because it's not gonna be rounded. So you're gonna have sand stuck all in there and that's gonna mess up the ratio. So you're going to have to be extremely careful about those corners. Those corners are going to get mucky and it's gonna be a problem. So we're gonna have to watch for that.
Why is it gonna get mucky?
So so the first thing I told Todd, I finally convinced him, I was like, you have to put the water in first, because let's say you are making a cake in a round drum like this or whatever, and you've got these corners, right? These corners. You put your flour and your egg in, now you've got a whisk. and you are mixing like this, is there flour? Yeah, is it all mixing up? No, there's flour caked right here. The wet has just made it like this.
Yeah.
And the whisk isn't getting in those corners. So no matter what we get, unless you get that square one I was showing you, unless you're able to get into those corners, it's all gonna be caked in there. So you start with water. Always start with water, and then the microsilica, and then you start mixing as you're pouring in the dry ingredients so that it's blending like this. Pretty soon it won't be caked in. You're fine. Then you're good.
Okay.
Anyway, so those two things are extremely, very, very important.
Well, hopefully we can find an electric concrete mixer
If you find.
that's like small.
The ones,
I don't think so,
I don't
but
think so. I think I can find the.
yeah, you just check, yeah.
The hand one?
Yeah, the hand one, I think, I will find it.
Well, like I was telling him, if you
Yes.
find one that's like this big, it's not gonna do you any
Yeah.
good. It's just not gonna, it's not gonna mix anything.
I've seen the bigger ones.
You need
Yeah.
as big as you can get.
Okay.
Or I don't know if you guys rent machines out here. I didn't know, but,
Sometimes, not that one. They'll rent big ones, generators.
well, I mean, if you,
concrete
like your
mixers.
giant mixer is what, I don't even know, 8 cubic feet, I don't know, 9, 10 cubic feet mixer.
So you need
At the thing, but I'm saying if you can rent a 3 cubic foot
A small
mixer,
one, right?
yeah, just a little hand one,
I
little
don't think anyone
electric,
would-
no,
They
nothing
don't
like
usually
that.
rent the small ones.
I mean,
I was just checking.
we could find a hand one where it's a concrete mixer where you spin it by hand. I think I've seen that before.
Yes.
We could do that,
Cool.
right?
Yeah, that would work.
That would
Okay.
work.
So if you try and find, I think I've seen that at Batu Basurat, 2 box, right? 2 box was the main name, it's not called 2 box there. Losan, out there beside there, I think there's a couple which is, the concrete mixer, small one, and then you just turn it with your hand.
We had one we used to use for kids that it looks like a bucket with a lid on it, and it's got 2 blades in it, and you put everything in it, and you turn on the side, and the kids kick it around the yard. It rolls. It actually works pretty good.
Okay.
That's cute.
It was called a rotor mixer.
That's
Okay.
really cute.
Yeah.
You just put the kiss inside of the thing.
Yeah.
Like a hamster.
I see a lot of cats around. We could.
Did anybody
Sorry.
watch Karate Kid on Netflix?
What is it called?
Karate Kid on Netflix?
No.
Because they actually got people to exercise by going in the cement mixer. and bang. Okay, so I think that would be the best solution. If we can find a hand concrete mixer and then we just mix by hand, it looks good and it's quiet. And we probably, I don't know if we'll do 200 liters, but we'll do a couple of batches and people can see it.
And if you have enough people there, they can all trade off. If they get
Yes.
tired, they're gonna get tired.
Okay,
Is that it?
good. I
Most of them
think we
use
should,
what I'm thinking.
yeah, I think people probably wanna, we can
Hey.
move.
Yeah.
One other document that's up there, if you ever need it, for scientific people, is the optimizing mixed materials. And this is really an in-depth guide to concrete that explains the microsilica, the chemistry. This is in-depth. This really tells you exactly how the concrete reactions take place.
Yeah.
If you ever need it, you'll have it as a reference.
Yeah,
These long
I
days
think we
made
need this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
used to
it.
this. I know you guys are not. I'm very used to this. He can go on. He has so much information. I promise you.
This
It's.
is a nice little chart here of
Oh,
some of
there.
the different
there,
sizes.
That's a good one. I
Good
could not
enough.
find that one for the life of me, could I? I tried
There's also
What's
a,
the tallest reef ball you could make?
Goliath, but you can
Is
put
that-
lifter rings on too.
Could we, if we wanted a custom one that was taller, could it be done?
you can, but you can't find any bladders for the center taller than the Goliath ball. That's the A7. You
Right.
could actually make a scaffold and make a internal, or you can make a hybrid. You can make layer cakes much bigger.
I saw there were some squares that you guys did to raise the reef balls up. on the
That's what
website.
this booster ring is. There's
Yeah.
different ways that you can extend it up. It starts to get pretty expensive, but
Yeah.
you can.
You just want bigger and bigger.
Oh, no, the particular reason was, the particular reason was, so Empire Hotel is like, it's a very fancy hotel here.
Yep.
And we actually have an office there. So we're gonna start bringing our people there, but they don't have a snorkeling site nearby, so they have a beach. The closest reef to them is actually about 30 minutes by boat. It's quite nice diving there, it's a hornet's nest. But the top part is 5 meters. And if you're snorkeling, you want to be able to see something maybe 2.5 meters, right? 3 meters, you can't see it sometimes. So if I wanted to get a reef ball there, and where we can see the reef ball in the coral and the fish, I need the reef ball to be 2.5 meters high.
What you can do,
Yeah.
especially in
That's
climates
really
like
taller,
this, is you can make a big pile of bait balls or low pro balls and you can pile them up. It's actually a very effective thing for snapper fish, because snapper like deep cover.
And we just lock them together.
And you
underwater.
if you just pile them and let them go randomly, they kind of interlock on their own anyway, so they're pretty
Will it
stable.
wood if we attach the bear ball one
On top, stack it.
stack it?
A lot of times you put a piling in first, and then you can float the reef balls and put them right up on top of the piling. We do that under docks a lot, along piling docks. But yes, you can stack them. If they get unstable without a piling down the middle, if you go too high.
Another thing you can do.
That's why the piles that start wide and go up are pretty stable. If they shake, they kind of go down into position.
Another thing you can do, we were going to do for a marriage proposal for someone. We had made a bunch of Evo bases, weren't they?
Yeah, but that's not gonna be tall.
Oyster balls. No, but you can shape them and spell things out. Snorkeler
Yeah,
would
but
be
that
able to
wouldn't-
see it,
that
wouldn't they?
wouldn't give them the 2.5 meters.
No, I know, but they'd still be able to see it. It was big enough.
Some days, some days they can, some days they can't.
Some days it's clear.
Yeah, some days it's clearer. Okay, we probably should end this. I think you guys probably want to make a move. I haven't talked to you
You
about the
guys are ready to
schedule,
go,
but
aren't ya?
maybe we can grab dinner now before I drop you guys back, and I'll tell you about the schedule for the next few days.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Any questions from you guys? Yeah. So
Too much, I'm sure.
Oh, no,
It's good, it's
I have
pretty-
lots more to ask. I mean, they probably are like too much info for them, but I mean, I wanted to ask about the blue carbon credits, because MPABD, one of the main points where you're saying that they have a project on carbonization or decarbonization. I said, reef ball, and they're like, how does that do decarbonization? And I'm like, well, okay, we'll talk about it another time. So there's little things like this. We talked a little bit, the anti-trolling, how does the design actually work? I saw you guys did channel marker habitat on the website as well, so I've got a lot of little things I wanted to ask a bit more about. And that just sort of helps me to propose to the government. And then I think you guys did like a hurricane rapid call recovery. I want to be able to tell the government that we're trained to do that and do something. A lot of hurricanes here about vessel grounding, maybe things like that. So there are more little things to ask. But we can probably find another session for that. Guys, you listening? What did I just say?
Something about doing something.
Yes, maybe.
What you said was that you're not. See, I told you, I was listening.
Okay.
girl.
So this is important to you guys, yeah, because you guys need to deal with this so that I can work on some of the projects next time. Okay. I was asking about decarbonization, how we both can assist with that, because NPP has a project decarbonization this year. Okay, which will be invited to find a scope to talk about. Yeah. Then I was asking more about hurricane rapid coral recovery. One of the initiatives on the Laut is that we want to be able to respond to emergencies in the sea, whether it's a beach well or a vessel grounding or a big storm. So if they can do some training on rapid coral recovery, that's useful for us, because then we can tell the government that we can do that. We can tell the oil and gas people that we can do that. If they have an accident, they can call us, correct?
I think Ty and Anna needs to come back to Florida with us.
Yes, actually.
Get some more training and learn.
Yeah, I would probably try and plan something like that, because it'd be nice to go and see some of the work being done. And I can come back and give a presentation to the government on what's been done in other places, and that sort of helps.
Yeah.
So yes, at some point, in the next 1 to 3 years, probably. We want to go to the States next year in August, September, but I don't know when I'll be in Florida.
You going to Mississippi and where was the other one?
We're gonna go to
Yeah.
Louisiana and California and then Canada, where I was
That's
at
right,
a couple
that's right.
places.
That's right. You were telling us that on the first day.
Yes.
It was, you had all these major plans. And I was like, okay. Now I understand a little bit. Major plans, got it.
Yeah.
Just like
So-
major ordering of food and major,
Oh,
you know.
yes.
He thinks big, I like it.
We don't do in things in house.
I like
It's
it,
like-
no way,
Yeah.
no way.
Um,
That's a good
We
picture,
just
Todd.
ball what we can do.
Yeah, actually, I mean, the other things like I wanted to discuss is, like I mentioned just now, if I wanted to put a project together for 1,000 reef balls, what's the planning, what's the costing, and what's the logistics? But we're not talking about this, these guys are gonna go, I'm sure. But these are the other topics that we're still gonna cover. And if I wanted to do, because basically, if I do a project, I want to set up a longer term goal, which is for this launch, we're basically telling sponsors, hey, our first goal is we want to do 1,000 reef balls in the next 2 years.
Where's your phone?
Are you one of the sponsors that will help us, right? That's the question. But then the next one is once we have some sponsors involved and we see how realistic this is, then we want to say, hey, I have a 10-year plan. I want to get pledges, and who are the pledges that are supporting me for the next 10 years to get to this plan, right? So a little bit more of the planning that I want to discuss with you guys about that sort of thing.
This is another thing that we can talk about, just you and I later, but this is the authorized contract agreement. And
This
that
is
will
actually
help
very
you in
important as
pricing.
well.
So
Yes.
I've started a little bit of a draft on it, but we've obviously got to figure out all the specifics. But this is a generic contract, and then we customize it for whatever you want. So this is kind of like a document that we can work with and we can set up for you personally and how you want to do it and all that kind of stuff. But so it's already here. Just want to let you know on that one. That was another thing we had up here.
Yes, so the contract is important because we're gonna get it so that when we're here, and also that affects costing and things like that, yes? Yeah. Okay, good, so last one to discuss, we still gotta figure out where to squeeze some of these office sessions in. Tomorrow, 7 AM, 20 days, correct?
Oh, on your phone?
So just to wrap up, tomorrow, 7 AM, 20 days, demold, talk quickly to them, look at what they're gonna do, and then we're gonna go on the boat and we're gonna go out to sea. Yeah, we're gonna do 2 to 3 dives tomorrow. And we should be back at the shop maybe 3, and then we will then maybe have a quick debrief, and then we can again plan next day, same thing, Saturday, Sunday, all the same stuff.
There is weather warning.
What?
Weather warning.
There is a weather warning for this weekend.
So we might be back earlier.
We might be back earlier.
The password here was PONI 2020. Oh, 2021.
Okay, please have a look at the weather tomorrow and discuss with Mark, because if it looks really bad, we're gonna buy it earlier. That means we're just gonna demold for 15, 20 minutes, and then we're gonna go. We're gonna tell, we're gonna trust you guys, we've trained you, please do it right, and then we're gonna head out. Yeah, so let us know tomorrow about the plan, okay? Yes, site survey, we definitely go out to the site. Coral nursery, if we think we may not go out the next day, we probably will do site survey and grab some coral the same day. We might just squeeze that into one day if it's bad weather.
Okay.
We might have to, I think, we might have to, because it's getting progressively worse. Tuesday deployment, I'm a little bit concerned. But that is the calmest day out of the next 5 or 6 days. But if it's a bit too choppy, the barge won't go out. We can still deploy, just not the big bay balls. We could deploy, we could carry the low pros and the oysters. Yeah, so that's the backup plan. Yeah.
We own boats, we know how it is. Sometimes you just don't go out. It's better to stay home and stay safe than not.
Yes. Can you talk to me tomorrow morning about
It's on.
if we want to get a winch on the boat for the low pro, how we modify it? Yeah, we can do it. I know how to do it. We gotta get a clamp, and then we gotta get an L, and then we can bring it up. But you can talk to me tomorrow, Harry. Okay? Good. All right. Mark, are you still there? I don't know, Mark and Lee, you guys are still there, but if you are, thanks.
Tomorrow, there's a coral table as well, right?
Yes.
So you're gonna do that before?
Yes. we're gonna-
Before? Okay.
Oh, you know what? No, it's
Coral
fine.
table After.
We'll talk about after the call table because it's gonna be easy. We have a survey table, we put the chopping board together, 2 hours is done. So we talk to Joko when we come back.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
And you need to bring your GPS and then also the marker.
Yes. So tomorrow, tools to bring, you guys already know. Talk to Mark, make sure Mark has the rebar. Yeah. So priority is just going out early.
Yeah.
It
Do you want to
is,
share that PDF, that list that they had?
no, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
The markers as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so make sure I already told them, Mark, this thing, oh,
Yes.
for me, I need to look for the marker.
Marker, yes.
Yeah.
Me too, yes.
But if we don't have that, it's fine, we can just use whatever, we can
Yeah.
use a sausage and a brick. Yeah,
Yeah.
we gotta bring some bricks and bring a bottle and a rope to mark some places as well, yeah? Mark, are you still there? Hello, Mark?
We've sent him to sleep.
What?
He just messaged already got rebar. So we
Got
have-
rebar, okay, he got rebar.
From,
Oh, that's
Yes,
right.
yes, yes.
There you
Listening,
go.
listening.
You
Yeah,
got,
my phone always lag. I cannot mute.
okay, you got the rebar already, we got from Daikyo or what?
No, this one we got it from Sirasa, our old office.
We got 3 rebars, 5/8, yeah?
This one we cut tomorrow because I got 2 rebar about 2 meter each.
Oh, okay. Wait, why do we have rebar at Chirasa?
Last time.
It's from old one, I think.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, so Mark, tomorrow, you know, you're on the boat. Get your camera ready, plus my camera as well. Yeah?
Yeah.
Hello? Mark?
Yes.
And can you bring the drone? If the weather's okay, we can fly the drone as well. Huh? Just take a picture of us on the boat.
Fly. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I don't think because the whole day tomorrow the wind speed is 11 knots, 12 knots, so I don't think so.
Okay, never mind. Let's not lose the drone. Okay.
No, I don't want to lose the drone.
He already crashed the drone in the sea.
Oh, no.
River job in the river, so strong wind. Okay, all right, that's it. Thanks, Mark.
Okay.
Just
All right, bye.
throw somebody up in the air and go snap.
I've lost about 3 drones over the years, it happens.
Who is a cheerleader? You look like a cheerleader. You look
Good.
like a cheerleader.
Did you guys learn a lot from today, the meeting? Yes? What did you guys learn? Quick, couple points.
Marker certificate is so important.
Good girl. Because
What
that was way
No,
early
no,
on.
no, notes. You should know.
It's how you plan the coral, not do it like this.
Oh, very good.
Yes.
Like this.
Very
important. Very.
Yes, great.
But this
Okay.
mistake also.
Higher productivity and faster current.
Mhm,
Yes.
mhm, yeah.
Fast
very
current
good.
is important.
Yeah.
Not too fast, but fast. Bea.
No, stop it. No, stop
wedding.
it. Stop it.
It's a wedding.
For heaven's sake. Oh, for heaven's sake.
Yeah, think about what we learned today. Yeah, while we look at the video. Hey, it's a reef ball.
That's the altar.
We wanted to leave it down there for.
Hey, there's an extra reef ball.
I want to go home and then. Very good fun.
Very friends, he's a great chef and discovery camp. And great vision, not that.
No dress, no makeup, no hair, no shoes, no studio, you know, it was the boat.
Now we think about.
Harry, his best man over there, he made that for me. So I was like, oh, over there, we have something like that in the background. Yeah, Beth is my maison right there, but behind us is the ring of witnesses, friends, you know, people that wanted to join us. Very much. It's funny, he's like, oh, he wouldn't let me go! That's my youngest daughter right there. That's the one. Hard to get close with all that gear. You kind of got in last minute. Oh, wait. What fish are there? So we go under.
It's called the wedding room. Meet the reef.
Fish. He's like,
You didn't want to wear a wedding gown underwater?
no, I wore the veil. And then he pushes the tank. He's like, no. And then we went for a dive. You know, everybody got to go away for a dive.
I must.
Yeah, missed it. I think
It's okay.
we were talking.
Okay. That's good.